301, a grand display of plane exploration. The teleportation hall of the floating city was unusually crowded today. The air carried a dozen different perfumes and the soft rustle of robes. High-ranking officials, scholars, and journalists from 12 countries clustered together, whispering with faces full of anticipation and a touch of unease. Everyone. Jason stood tall before the vast teleportation array. Today, you will be the first officially invited to step into another plane. Our first stop, the Earth Elemental Plane. An official from the French Ministry of Magic nervously tugged at his collar. Mr. Lester, is this safe? Much safer than taking a walk through the streets of London. Jason smiled. The big fellows on the Earth plane are quite hospitable. We already have a very stable foothold there. The German representative stared at the intricate, interwoven runes on the floor, brow furrowed. This kind of interplane teleportation technology, it completely exceeds our existing theories. Isn't that the charm of Arcane? Jason said, moving to the control panel. 0. Initiate the teleportation sequence to the Earth Elemental Plane. Program initiated, Zero's voice echoed. Target, Earth Elemental Plane. Coordinates locked. Teleportation array energy stable, ready for entry. The giant runic circle began to turn, a soft, earthy yellow glow spilling from the patterns and bathing the hall in warm light. A dry, pure scent of soil filled the air. Everyone, stand in the middle of the array. Jason beckoned. Relax, don't run. The representatives exchanged glances and stepped into the circle. A light weightlessness swept over them. The world twisted and reassembled. My goodness, someone breathed. An Italian delegate stood with his mouth hanging open. Under their feet stretched an endless plain of earthy yellow. The sky was a deep ochre, and rocky islands of all sizes floated slowly, some inverted, strange plants growing from their undersides as if defying gravity itself. Welcome to the Earth Elemental Plane, Jason said, bringing them back to attention. The rules here are a little different from ours. Gravity's lighter, and the Earth elemental energy is so thick it feels almost choking. In the distance, a massive form moved, what looked at first like a walking mountain. Each heavy step sent the ground booming. That thing? Is it a mountain? And it's walking? It's not a mountain, the American representative stammered. It's an Earth elemental elder. Jason nodded. They're generally good-natured. Don't provoke him, and he'll treat you like a rock. No sooner had he spoken than the ground trembled. A colossal figure of rock and soil erupted upward, a vague humanoid outline over 10 meters tall. 2 large yellow gemstones served as its eyes, glowing softly. Guests from afar, welcome to my territory. Each word rumbled like grinding stone, yet the tone was calm. My name is Axe. I am the guardian here. The representative stumbled back. Don't be afraid, Jason said, stepping forward. Axe, these are friends from my homeland. They're here to learn about your civilization. Ah, Lord Jason. Axe's huge head bowed with surprising humility. Your friends are our friends. Allow me to guide them. Led by Axe, the delegation began a breathtaking tour. They visited crystalline caves that sang, the crystals shifting color with every melody. They passed suspended gardens where plants required no soil, roots drawing nutrients straight from the air. The most staggering sights were the colossal veins of magic ore. These are the purest earth elemental crystals, Jason said, pointing to a shimmering wall. A small piece like that contains as much energy as a whole ton of our magic ore. And the reserves are, the Japanese representative began, eyes alight. Effectively limitless, Jason finished with a nod. If such resources were available to us, the Japanese delegate said, trailing off. Of course they can be, but only if we don't destroy the ecology, Jason replied. We've signed an agreement with the Earth Elementals to use sustainable mining methods. Axe added, Lord Jason has taught us much. We are happy to share our abundance. This is mutual benefit, win-win. Before the impression of the Earth plane could fade, the delegation was teleported to their second destination, the Goblin Kingdom beneath the Earth, the city of rust iron. The contrast was striking. In an impossibly vast cavern, thousands of furnaces roared, painting the city in an orange-red glow. Goblin craftsmen hammered and shouted, their clangs forming a savage industrial symphony. Welcome, welcome, Vice Chief Wrathhammer greeted them with a booming laugh. Taller than most goblins, and with a braided beard nearly dragging on the floor, he thumped his chest. Brother Jason, you brought many guests this time. Vice Chief Wrathhammer, these are representatives from various ministries of magic, Jason introduced. They're very interested in our cooperation model. Ha ha! Then let them see goblin craftsmanship. Wrathhammer grinned. Follow me. They toured the underground industrial complex, traditional forges where master craftsmen, using ancestral techniques, forged divine weapons, and bright, clean arcane factories where automated rune arrays operated silently and standardized magic tools rolled along assembly lines. Traditional craft and arcane tech perfectly combined, the Vice Chief declared, pride etched on his face. We haven't abandoned our ancestors' hammers, and we've learned the new tricks Brother Jason brought. Our efficiency has increased tenfold, and the products are better than ever. A German delegate pressed his face against a protective shield to peer into a machine. This level of automation, our factories couldn't achieve this. The key is cooperation, Jason said. The French representative nodded, thoughtful. Technology sharing, complementary strengths, this could create miracles. In a vast exhibition hall, Wrathhammer unveiled the latest products. Look at this, arcane battle armor we've just developed. He pointed to a suit of shimmering armor. Goblin forging combined with the floating city's rune technology. He smiled. Defensive capability 3 times better than old knight armor and only half the weight. He lifted a uniquely shaped staff. This is an arcane amplification staff. It can increase a wizard's power by 50%. And it consumes almost no magic itself, Wrathhammer added. The representatives crowded around, stunned. The German vice ambassador's throat was dry. We can produce 1,000 sets of this armor in a month, Wrathhammer said. With more orders and more effort, production can double. The American finally couldn't contain himself. Are these available for purchase? Of course, Jason said with a smile. Isn't that one purpose of our open cooperation? To let good things circulate throughout the magical world. Back at the Floating Cities International Conference Hall, long tables were set, signing pens laid out, magical contracts ready. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason stood at the head of the table. What you've seen today, I believe, gives you an intuitive understanding of our cooperation model. I now formally invite your countries to establish comprehensive cooperative relations with the City of Dawn. The French representative was first to rise, chair legs scraping. The French Ministry of Magic is willing to sign a cooperation agreement with the City of Dawn. We hope to participate in the development of other planes and introduce the relevant technologies. The German representative followed. The German Ministry of Magic, likewise, we are particularly interested in the goblins' industrial production techniques. One by one, Italy, Spain, the Netherlands, the United States, Japan, Australia, 8 countries expressed their intent. Very good. Jason's nod was satisfied. Now the details. First, technology exchange. We will establish arcane research branches in your countries to promote basic arcane. However, core technologies, especially those that can directly convert resources into personal might, must remain under the City of Dawn's control. This is non-negotiable. A flicker of disappointment crossed some faces, but it quickly turned to understanding. No country would readily surrender its most valuable skills. Second, personnel training. We welcome outstanding talents from all countries to study in the floating city, but candidates must pass our screening and assessment. Finally, resource sharing. Profits from developing other planes will be distributed according to investment ratios, but development plans, rules, and environmental standards must be decided by us. After a brief discussion, 8 countries signed preliminary cooperation agreements covering technology, resources, personnel, military, and intelligence cooperation. A new era begins today, Jason said at the signing. An era of win-win cooperation. Faced with Lord Voldemort and his minions, we must stand united. Only then can we protect everything we hold dear. The ceremony ended amid bright faces. The documents signed were more than ink and parchment. They were a ticket to a new world order. The City of Dawn was the axis of that order, and Jason Lester had set the rules. That night, the floating city hosted a grand banquet. To the future of the magical world, Jason raised his glass. And to peace and prosperity. Cheers! The crisp sound of clinking glass rang through the hall. Out the windows, the galaxy glittered. A new era had begun, an era named after Jason Lester. In years to come, his name would echo throughout the magical world, admired not just for power but for the changes he had made. From now on, the magical world was no longer a scattering of isolated islands. It had become a unified entity led by the City of Dawn, facing the future together. The next day, the Daily Prophet devoted its entire front page to the signing, an unprecedented run of coverage. The headline read, "New Era. 8-Nation Alliance. City of Dawn leads the future." Reporters described the wonders of other planes and the goblins' industrial might in breathless prose. International magical media reacted in kind. The French Magical Times called it the most important day in the history of magic. The German Wizard Weekly declared the global order completely reshuffled, and the American Magical Herald hailed an unprecedented era of prosperity. At the same time, the City of Dawn launched its global recruitment plan for interplanar adventurers. In 3 days, the application parchments piled up to fill half an office, over 5,000 submissions. Wizards across the world were ignited by the opportunity to explore the unknown, to gain power, to be part of a new era. Jason stood at the center of it all, redefining what was possible and remaking the future. Under his gaze, the magical world seemed headed toward an exceptionally bright tomorrow, an era of miracles. Floating City, Combat Command Center. Around the massive circular conference table sat Jason's core team: Dumbledore, Snape, Moody, the real one, Sirius, and a handful of the top Aurors. A holographic projection cast light across their faces. Scrolling lines of data replayed Barty Crouch Jr.'s confession. "The portkey is a trap, that much is already clear," Jason said, standing in front of the projection. The room fell silent. "Perfect. We'll turn their scheme against them." He flicked his hand, and the hologram switched to a layout of the Hogwarts Quidditch pitch. "They want Harry, so we'll send Harry. But this time Harry won't be going alone," Jason added. Moody's magically spinning eyes stopped for the first time. "Using our own as bait?" "Yes." Jason's answer was calm. "Voldemort's remaining followers are hiding too well. Picking them off one by one would take forever. If they gather themselves, that's another story," Dumbledore said. Snape snorted coldly. "An utterly reckless risk. If it fails—" "It won't fail," Jason interrupted. His voice was steady and carried weight. "Zero has simulated every possibility. And the surprise we've prepared will far exceed their imagination." Sirius's brow hardened. "Jason, do you really want Harry to take this risk?" "This isn't a risk." Jason looked around the table. "This is the fastest way to end this farce. Voldemort's return depends on Harry's blood. That's the core of their plan, and it's also their fatal weakness. We'll use it to draw them all into the slaughterhouse we've prepared." Dumbledore steepled his fingers and rested them against his beard. "What's your arrangement?" "The third task will proceed as scheduled. Everything else will lie beneath the surface." Jason laid out the plan. "The moment Harry touches the portkey, our assault team will teleport in. A specially designed teleportation array will accomplish the battlefield drop in seconds. By then, Voldemort and his Death Eaters will discover they haven't caught a lamb to be led to slaughter. They'll have kicked over the nest of the City of Dawn." There was a fierce glint in Moody's good eye. "Tsk, crazy enough. Lure the wolves into your yard, lock the gate, and unleash the dogs. I like it." "Harry's safety is the key," Snape said flatly. "A 1-second delay in teleportation and he's dead. He won't die." Jason dismissed the concern. "I'll equip him with a set of paladin armor. Never mind Avada Kedavra. Even a dragon's breath won't take him down. He also gets an emergency teleport rune. If things go south, he can come home instantly. In the worst-case scenario, he can hold out until we crash the party." Dumbledore nodded slowly. "The plan is feasible, but the execution must be flawless." "Of course." Jason brought up a new projection, dense with battle plans and personnel assignments. Zero has refined every detail. Invisible teleport nodes will be placed around the Quidditch pitch. The moment Harry disappears, we're there. At the same time, the floating city will go to maximum combat readiness. Sirius stood abruptly. "Count me in this time." "You're coming," Jason said with a small smile. "You're Harry's godfather. It's your right and your responsibility." After the meeting, Jason returned alone to the research lab. The room smelled of oil and ozone. Shelves were crowded with strange arcane components and experimental devices. A moment later, Harry pushed the door open. "Jason, you wanted to see me?" "Sit." Jason indicated the chair opposite him. "There's something I need to tell you." Harry sat up straight, expression taut. Is it about the third task? Jason looked him in the eye. This isn't a competition anymore, Harry. This is war. Harry's face darkened. You mean Voldemort? He's coming back. Jason laid out the confession and the unfolding plan. Barty Crouch Jr. admitted they tampered with the trophy. It's a portkey. Its destination is right where Voldemort will be. They plan to use your blood to resurrect him. Harry's knuckles went white on his knees. Then, what do? We turn their scheme against them, Jason said quietly. You follow their script, and we'll be right behind you. When Voldemort crawls out of whatever he crawls out of, he won't find just you waiting. He'll find all of us. Harry was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was dry but steady. I'm in. Jason nodded. I knew you would be. Don't worry, you won't die in vain. He opened a cabinet and laid 3 items on the table. Your tools. First, an amulet, life shield. It can die for you once, even against Avada Kedavra. Then a small rune-carved stone, emergency teleportation rune. Crush this, and you're out of there. Finally, a strangely shaped staff, Arcane amplification staff. It can make your Expelliarmus hit with the force of a Sectum Sempra, and it carries several defensive spells. Harry took them. The weight of the items and the power humming through them steadied him. Thanks, Jason. Between friends. Jason patted his shoulder. After this, Voldemort will be a word from history. The wizarding world deserves some peace. Match day arrived under a clear sky. The Quidditch pitch had been transformed into a towering, sinister maze. Hedges blocked the light, and anything could be hiding within. The stands were a roar of sound, cheers and expectation. The crowd knew nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, Ludo Bagman's voice boomed. Welcome to the ultimate showdown of the Triwizard Tournament. Today we will witness the birth of a champion. At the maze entrance, the 4 champions stood side by side, Harry, Cedric, Fleur, and Crumb. Only Harry knew what truly waited at the center. In the VIP box, Jason sat beside Dumbledore, wearing a polite smile like any other spectator. 0, status, he sent over the mental link. Teleportation array self-check complete. All systems normal, 0 replied in his mind. Assault team in position, ready to teleport. Very good. Jason's gaze never left Harry. Countdown initiated. With Bagman's whistle, the champions plunged into the maze. Harry ran straight for the center, knowing that the glittering trophy was no simple prize but a one-way ticket to hell. Acromantula pincers, humping willow lashes, mind-bending illusions. Relying on the gadgets Jason had given him and his own skill, he cut through the threats. Finally, he reached the center. The Triwizard Cup floated, emitting a cold, deadly light. He reached out and grasped it. A hook grabbed his navel and tore the world away. He landed on soft, damp earth. He had arrived at a sinister graveyard. The air smelled of mold and gravewort. Not far off, a huge cauldron boiled a sickly green. Harry Potter, a cold, high voice intoned. Wormtail stepped from behind a tombstone, cradling a bundle of rags from which an ugly, baby-like thing squirmed. Your time has come. Harry tightened his grip on the staff. The warmth pulsing from its core ran up into his palm. Jason's instructions were sharp and clear in his head. The show had begun. At Hogwarts, Jason rose. Action. His command, transmitted over the mental link, hit every member of the assault team like a pistol shot. Coordinates, Little Hangleton Graveyard. Prepare to clear the area. Around the Quidditch pitch, hidden teleportation nodes flashed and vanished. The assault teams blinked out of their placements and, in the space of a heartbeat, reappeared on the outskirts of Little Hangleton. Jason watched the grotesque scene unfold in the distance, his face cold and unreadable. Since you've come, he murmured. Don't leave, Tom. 303, the 3-body Voldemort's shocking conspiracy. The moon over Little Hangleton Cemetery was an eerie pale disk. Harry gripped his arcane amplifying staff and watched as Wormtail tossed the deformed, infant-like thing into a cauldron that hissed with green smoke. Bone of the father, unknowingly given. Wormtail's voice shook. No sooner had he finished than a pale white bone shot from the open grave at his feet and spun into the cauldron. Flesh of the servant, willingly sacrificed. He raised his silver hand and, with a swift motion, severed his own right hand. Blood splattered into the brew, and the liquid began to boil violently. Blood of the enemy, forcibly taken. Wormtail turned and came at Harry, a cold glint on the dagger in his remaining hand. Harry didn't flinch, This had all been part of the plan. The dagger sliced Harry's arm, his blood dripped into the cauldron. A blinding green light swallowed the graveyard. Thick, acrid smoke rolled upward, and a tall, thin silhouette writhed within it. Lord Voldemort was being made flesh again. He emerged with deathly pale, scaly skin and vertical crimson pupils that glowed in the dark. He flexed unnaturally long fingers, and his voice sent a chill through the air. 13 years, he whispered. 13 years, and I am back. Before anyone could react, a teleportation array flared at the edge of the cemetery. Jason appeared with his whole combat team. Dumbledore, Snape, Moody, Sirius, and several top Aurors standing behind him. Tom Marvolo Riddle, Jason called evenly. Welcome back. Voldemort turned, and instead of recoiling, he laughed. Jason Lester, did you really think I didn't know this was a trap? His laughter wound with growing madness. Did you think I would be foolish enough to walk into your snare unprepared? Another voice answered from the shadows, cold and amused. Master never has only one plan. A second Voldemort stepped out, slightly different in bearing, older, more malignant. Mervolo Gaunt's ring. Dumbledore's face darkened. A Horcrux used to create a body, he said. Not just one. A third voice rang from the other side of the graveyard. The third Voldemort that emerged carried an aura more sinister than the other two combined. Helga Hufflepuff's cup also granted me a new form. 3 Voldemorts formed a triangle around Jason and his allies. Jason's pupils pinched. 3-bodied Voldemort, he murmured. Your ambition runs deeper than I thought. Ambition? The original sneered. This is insurance. 1 body can be destroyed, 3 cannot all fall at once. And, a cunning flash in his red eyes, did you really think I was waiting here without plans elsewhere? A cold shiver ran down Jason's spine. He reached through the mental link. 0, status at Hogwarts. Master, Hogwarts is under attack. Zero's tone was urgent, harsher than before. A large contingent of Death Eaters surrounds the school, and a giant serpent is charging the castle. Nagini, Harry hissed through clenched teeth. A Horcrux fragment. The ring clone nodded with appreciation. Nagini carries part of my soul. She is leading my servants to harvest those amusing little wizards. The cup clone added, while you dally here, the children there will be defenseless. Jason's hands tightened until his knuckles creaked. It was a masterful feint. Use Harry as bait to draw the best forces to the graveyard, and then strike Hogwarts while it was vulnerable. The main Voldemort's voice dropped, deliberate and cruel. Your choices are simple. Stay and fight us 3 to the death, or split your forces to rescue Hogwarts and be picked off by us individually. Either way, you lose. Dumbledore and Snape exchanged a look of grim calculation. It was nearly a checkmate. Jason, Dumbledore said quietly, we must decide. Jason's mind raced. Facing 3 Voldemorts and a Nagini leading the assault on Hogwarts, this trap ran deep. Then a small, dangerous light flared in his eyes. You miscalculated one thing, he said. The 3 Voldemorts sneered in unison. And what is that? You thought the City of Dawn only had this many people. Jason smiled. 0, initiate Plan B. Plan B initiated. Zero's calm voice carried across the graveyard. The floating city's Golem Legion is en route to Hogwarts. Estimated arrival in 30 seconds. Simultaneously, international support teams have been deployed inside Hogwarts via the teleportation gate. The expressions on the Voldemort's faces faltered. Did you imagine I would come without a backup? Jason taunted. From the day the International Cooperation Agreement was signed, Hogwarts was never alone. Elite Aurors from France, Germany, and the United States are now inside, protecting the students. And my Golem Legion can handle your rabble and one long snake. The main Voldemort's face contorted with fury. Impossible. How could you have predicted this? Because I have this. Jason tapped his temple. Zero doesn't only deduce tactics, he analyzes behavior patterns and can temporarily borrow the power of the laws. Barty's confession was merely a lead. The true intelligence analysis lives here. The ring clone bellowed, undeterred. Even so, you still must face the 3 of us. Who said we'd all stay here? Jason glanced at his team. Dumbledore, you and Moody take the ring clone. Snape, Sirius, you take the cup clone. I'll face the main one. What about Harry? Sirius asked. He's with me, Sirius said before Jason could answer. Jason met Harry's eyes. You were always part of the prophecy. This fight includes you. Harry nodded, resolve hardening his features. I'm ready. Good. Jason leveled his staff. Then let's finish this. 0. Feed us live updates on Hogwarts. Received. Hogwarts' outer defenses are holding. The Golem Legion has engaged the Death Eaters. The Nagini clone is stalled within the main building, currently contained by the International Support Team. Excellent. Jason's lips tightened. Seems your bait and switch has failed. The three Voldemort's faces darkened. Their meticulous plan had been seen through and bluntly countered. Still, the main one spat each word. With the three of us united, you cannot win. Do you dare to challenge a god? The second taunted. Jason's expression was cold, almost playful. Then let's see how a god dances. Under the pale moon, the cemetery bristled with impending violence. Three-bodied Voldemort versus the City of Dawn's elite. What happened next would decide the fate of the wizarding world. At Hogwarts, the battle had already reached a fever pitch. The metallic golems reflected moonlight as they clashed with black-robed Death Eaters. Nagini writhed through castle corridors, but was tightly bound by unfamiliar, powerful spells woven by elite wizards from across the world. The tide was turning toward the light. Back in the graveyard, the real confrontation ignited. Jason faced the three Voldemorts, his fighting spirit blazing. He had waited for this moment too long. "Come, Tom," he shouted into the night. "Let me see how you dance." Little Hangleton Graveyard. Three identical Lord Voldemorts surrounded Jason and his companions from three directions, hemming them in. "Come, Tom," Jason said, raising his staff with an expression that gave nothing away. "Let's see how much you've improved in 13 years. The leading Voldemort sneered and laughed, pointing his wand straight at Jason's face. "Avada Kedavra!" A green jet of light ripped through the night. Jason didn't bother to dodge. "Boring." He murmured 2 words, then lifted his left hand. A golden light burst from his palm, and in an instant, the whole graveyard was bathed in a warm, overwhelmingly heavy glow. Demigod's domain. "What?" the three Voldemorts screamed in unison. Magic around them seemed to freeze. Their movements grew sluggish, and simply standing became a strain. The leading Voldemort realized with horror that he couldn't even lift his wand, much less form a spell. "This is a domain?" The Horcrux in the ring trembled in disbelief. "Impossible! How could you have reached this level?" "Just a demigod," Jason said casually. He found a tombstone to sit on, as relaxed as if he were in his own backyard. "I don't even need to use my full power to deal with you three." He glanced back at his teammates as if arranging a classroom exercise. "This is a good chance for practical combat. Professor Dumbledore, you take the main body. Sirius, take the ring one. Snape, the golden cup. Moody, the remaining rat, and the rest of the Death Eaters are yours." With a slight movement of his fingertips, Jason fine-tuned the domain's pressure, suppressing Voldemort enough that he could barely lift his head while leaving his own allies free to move. "Harry, come stand by me and watch." Harry ran to his side. The warm power wrapped around him like a thick cloak, steady and protective. "Is this the power of a demigod?" he asked in a low voice. "Just a corner of it," Jason said lightly. "True power is for protecting those you choose to protect." The battle began. Dumbledore took on the main body of Voldemort, held barely alive by the domain, and displayed the full force of a second-order arcanist. Each spell was a precisely calculated strike, fired like cannon shot, leaving Voldemort no chance to retaliate. "Tom, you still don't understand," Dumbledore said calmly as his wand moved. "Power is for protection, not conquest." "Shut up," Voldemort roared, but his voice was weak and hollow inside the domain. Sirius hurled himself at the ring Horcrux, exploiting his animagus form. He switched to a giant black dog without warning to bite, then back to human to unleash a barrage of spells. His attack was swift and brutal. "The glory of the black name. Today I'll show you," he snarled. "Traitor's spawn," the Horcrux spat. "Traitor?" Sirius's laugh was cold. "Betraying the dark for the light is the proudest thing I've ever done." Snape, with his intimate knowledge of the dark arts, struck at the Golden Cup's weak points. Every hit disrupted the Horcrux's magical flow for a moment. "Your knowledge of the dark arts is almost naive," he said icily as he worked. Moody was even less bothered. Facing Wormtail was child's play for someone with a magical eye. "Peter Pettigrew," he barked, his eye locking on the crawling rat-like man. "You sold out James and Lily 13 years ago and escaped justice. Today you pay." Wormtail, suppressed by the domain and unable even to change into a rat, begged, snot and tears on his face. Mercy, I was forced. Forces mean nothing, Moody said, and stupefied him into unconsciousness. A traitor was a traitor. Words were wasted. Under Jason's domain, there was no real contest. This was a one-sided beating. Voldemort, the main body, was driven to the ground by Dumbledore's spells and roared in fury. So many of you against me alone. Fair? Jason asked without looking. Did you discuss fairness with all the innocents you killed? He flicked his finger and gestured idly into the air. Far off, a shrill hiss fell silent. In a dusty chamber somewhere, a ring and a golden cup turned to powder at the same instant. With that, the two Horcrux manifestations fighting on the field seemed to lose their bones. They dissolved into black smoke and dissipated. Only the dying main body of Voldemort remained. Zero, how are things at Hogwarts? Jason asked quietly. Nagini has been eliminated, and the Death Eaters have been dealt with, came a cool voice in his mind. Hogwarts is safe. Jason rose and walked over to the bound figure on the ground. Tom Marvolo Riddle, your game is over. Voldemort tried to struggle, but he couldn't move. You can't kill me, he croaked, using what strength he had left. I am immortal. No one is immortal. Jason spread his hand, and pure light poured from his palm, enveloping Voldemort. There were no screams, no writhing, only the dark figure disintegrated in that light until nothing remained. It's over. Jason let the domain fall away. Silence returned to the graveyard. Moonlight washed everything as if nothing had happened. Harry stared, stunned. It's over? Power isn't for show, Harry, Jason said, turning to him. What you saw tonight is what justice looks like when someone chooses to do evil. Remember, true strength is protection. Dumbledore approached, a smile he could not quite hide on his face. Jason, well done. Everyone did well, Jason said, glancing at the others. Sirius was grinning. Snape for once did not look away, and Moody's grunt was approval enough. Let's go back. Jason waved, and a portal opened in midair. The Hogwarts students are waiting for news. They stepped through and returned to the castle. The Great Hall was alight. Students gathered and trembling between grief and relief. When Jason and his companions appeared, the hall erupted in cheers so loud the rafters seemed to shake. Lord Voldemort is dead! We won! Long live Jason! Jason stood in the center of the hall and looked at the excited young faces. The darkness has passed, he said, his voice carrying clearly to every ear. But this is not the end. It is the beginning. From now on, what the magical world becomes is up to you. The applause and cheering nearly lifted the ceiling. With that, the curtain fell on the fourth year amid earth-shattering celebration. The Great Hall at Hogwarts roared as if it might lift off the castle itself. Long tables were piled with delicacies not usually seen on ordinary days, and students' laughter bounced off the ancient stone. But this celebration felt different. It was less a simple end-of-year feast than the funeral of one era and the dawn of another. Is Lord Voldemort really gone? A tiny first year asked, nervously tugging the sleeve of an older student. Absolutely dead. The seventh year replied, puffing out his chest with pride. Jason did it himself. There isn't even a speck of bone left. In the VIP section, delegates from several ministries of magic who had rushed in from different countries still wore grave, restrained expressions. They had just watched remotely the moment Jason revealed his demigod domain. That power felt less like overwhelming force and more like something from another dimension. A single fact hit everyone at once. The balance of power in the magical world had been overturned. The French Ministry of Magic is willing to fully cooperate with the floating city's educational reform plan. The head of the French delegation was the first to approach Jason, eager. We need to introduce the Arcane education system. The German ministry as well, added the German representative without missing a beat. We can draw up the list of the first exchange scholars overnight. Jason shook hands with each of them, smiling with perfect courtesy. Of course, our goal is mutual benefit. Not far away, Harry sat at the Gryffindor table, watching everything happen with a distant look. How does it feel? He asked quietly. Unreal, Hermione said, sliding into the seat beside him. Harry looked down at his hands. A few hours ago, I was pointing my wand at him. Now it's over. It's not an end, Ron murmured through a mouthful of meat pie. It's the beginning. Jason said the real show is just starting, Hermione added. He's right. Voldemort was a rotten piece of the magical world. Now the rot's gone, the wound can heal, and the whole world can get healthier. A better world, Harry breathed. Can we really do it? Why not? Came a familiar voice from behind. Jason slid into the empty seat opposite them. Your performance tonight was better than most adult wizards in this castle, Harry. Harry flushed. You gave me those items. Items are inanimate, Jason cut in. It's the person wielding them who's alive. You charged forward. You kept your head. You thought about protecting others. That's worth more than any spell in a book. Hermione's eyes shone. Jason, what do we do next? Many things. Jason's gaze swept across the crowd and out through the great windows to the star-studded sky. First, we pull all the ministries together and form an alliance. Unified rules, shared resources, common standards. Everything needs to be brought to the same level. And education, he continued, turning back to them. The old ways are too conservative. The next generation must not only master magic, but also arcane knowledge, and they must learn how to create new things. Most importantly, he paused deliberately, the planar development project should officially begin. Planar development? Ron nearly choked on his food. You mean going to other worlds? Not just visiting, Jason said with a smile. Establish outposts there, mine resources, and spread our magic. Imagine it, countless worlds waiting, some full of strange magical creatures, some rich in alchemical materials, and some might even hide civilizations more powerful than ours. Harry's breathing quickened. His eyes caught fire. That sounds insane. This is the future, Jason said, and you three are the first to start cultivating it. Zero's voice spoke in Jason's head. Master, the floating city's High Council chamber is ready. Representatives from several countries are waiting. Jason nodded. I have some official business to attend to. He looked at them. Enjoy the holiday. Tomorrow we begin preparations for the new school year. 5th year will be very different. By then, Hogwarts won't be just a magic school. It will be the heart of global magical education. With that, he vanished in a shimmer of teleportation. The High Council chamber of the floating city was a vast circular room. Around the table sat faces from Britain, France, Germany, the United States, Russia, China, Japan, every major magical power of note. Jason materialized in the center. Ladies and gentlemen, he began. Lord Voldemort's death means the old way of doing things is obsolete. We need new rules. A massive holographic document unfolded above the table, the Global Magical World Alliance Treaty. Jason spoke plainly. A unified governing body, unified laws, unified education, unified resource allocation, and, most importantly, a unified expansion goal. The Alliance operates by council, he continued. No single absolute leader. Everyone has a voice at the table. That said, the floating city provides the technology and resources that make this possible, so it will hold a dominant position. The French delegate cleared his throat. Mr. Jason, about leadership. There is no single leader, Jason repeated. A council governs. That is fair. The German representative nodded. Without the floating city, our talk would be meaningless. The U.S. representative spoke next. We accept this arrangement, but hope for deep involvement in the planar development project. Jason smiled faintly. The planar development pie is large. The floating city cannot eat it all. I need all of you. For hours, the chamber buzzed with debate. Educational reforms, allocation ratios for planar resources, confidentiality levels for technology sharing, each clause sparking negotiation. As dawn streaked through the porthole, representatives signed a treaty that had been revised countless times. 17 countries signed that night. From today on, we're in the same boat, Jason said softly, looking at the document that would bind the highest powers of the magical world. After the meeting, he went alone to the top floor of the floating city, his private space with a single floor-to-ceiling window that looked out over sleeping Hogwarts and the dark sweep of the Forbidden Forest. 0. Report the results, he ordered. The Global Magical World Alliance Treaty has been signed by 17 countries. The remaining countries are expected to join within a month, 0 replied. The Educational Reform Plan has been approved. The first batch of exchange scholars will arrive next month. Preliminary authorization for the Planar Development Project has passed. 3 stable planes will be opened for exploration to elite students next school year. Good. Jason watched the pale light spread across the castle grounds. What about Hogwarts transformation? A plan has been set. A complex architectural blueprint unfolded in the air. New teaching buildings will be completed during the summer. An arcane laboratory, a planar teleportation center, and an international exchange center will open simultaneously. Hogwarts' capacity is expected to triple by the start of fifth year. Images of the past year flashed through Jason's mind, arriving as a newcomer, earning a place at the world's table, shaping the new rules. It had not been easy, but the result was worth it. Master, Zero said, one more matter requires your decision, Lord Voldemort's legacy. A dense list hovered between them. We recovered numerous dark arts items and forbidden texts at his Horcrux sites. How should they be handled? All forbidden books are to be archived and placed in a dedicated research library, Jason decided. We must study our history so we don't repeat it. Keep only those dark arts items that have clear research value. Destroy everything else that could cause harm. Understood. Zero recorded the instruction. One more recommendation, Zero added. Based on combat data from tonight, Harry Potter displayed extremely high combat intuition and potential. It is recommended he be included in the War Mage Elite Training Program. Jason nodded. He's a good candidate for combat training. And Hermione Granger? Exceptional academic talent and precise logical thinking. She should be guided toward arcane theoretical research. Ron Weasley? Zero queried. Balanced talents, but his loyalty is extraordinary, suitable for development toward alliance management. Excellent analysis, Jason said. Guide them accordingly. By now the sky had fully brightened. Students yawned as they emerged from dormitories for the first post-survival breakfast. They did not yet know how ordinary their morning would soon seem. From today on, they were no longer merely students at a magic school. They were the seeds of a new world, pioneers of magic's future. Jason watched the scattered young figures in the castle below, a rare anticipation welling in his chest. The fourth year had ended with cheers and victory. The true first year of a new era was only just beginning. These children would be taught arcane arts, step into other realms, mine and build on distant worlds, and take part in forging a great age. Jason would be the guide at the forefront. Sunlight filled the castle, and with it the hearts of those within. A new day had begun, and so had a new era. 306. The transition from undercurrent to overcurrent, floating city, intelligence analysis center. On the massive holographic screen, dense streams of data poured like a silent waterfall. Zero report, Jason said, breaking the hush over the control panel. Received, Zero replied, its voice filling the empty hall. Commander, the number of people worldwide who have successfully awakened magic through meditation has reached 503,521, and it continues to grow. The ministries of magic in every country remain silent about this phenomenon, Zero continued. They neither acknowledge it nor intervene. 500,000. The figure made Jason tap his knuckles once against the console. It was far more than he'd expected. A flash of green light opened a portal, and Draco stepped through, clutching a stack of nearly overflowing documents. Jason, I've mapped out what those old foxes are doing. He slapped the papers down on the panel. They signed the cooperation agreement and harvested the technological benefits, but when it comes to recognizing these newly awakened people, they all play Tai Chi. Admitting them would mean upsetting the pure-blood power structure. They're afraid. In short, they're afraid of disrupting the cake of vested interests. Before he finished, another portal lit and Hermione appeared, her face drawn with fatigue and worry. I just came from several secret shelters. She hurried to Jason. To the law, these awakened people are still muggles. They can't enroll in wizarding schools and have no official status in wizarding society. Many don't even dare use their powers openly in the muggle world for fear of being branded monsters. This can't continue. Jason stared at the number on the screen as it flickered. Tacit approval was cheap and useless. What they needed wasn't a life in the shadows, but a place in the light. Exactly, he said. Tacit approval is only a first step. What we need is formal recognition. These people aren't second-class citizens. They deserve to become full wizards and receive proper education. He turned toward the conference room. Call a meeting of the core team. It's time to give them a push. Floating City's highest conference room. Around the circular table sat Jason's most trusted advisors. Dumbledore, Snape, Sirius, Draco, Lucius, and Hermione. A holographic world map hovered above the table, dotted with countless blue points, each a newly awakened person without legal identity. Everyone, Jason began. In 6 months, 500,000 people have awakened. But now we face a new problem, he said, pointing at the data. Legally, they are still muggles. They lack the rights and protections of wizards. We must force the ministries of magic around the world to officially recognize their wizard status. Dumbledore steepled his fingers, his expression grave. Jason, once we make this demand public, we directly challenge the centuries-old bloodline foundations of wizarding society. This is a revolution. The conservatives will not stand idly by. So what? Hermione interrupted, eyes blazing. Bloodline theory is fundamentally wrong. Magic is magic, regardless of ancestry. We've already proven it with 500,000 living cases. Lucius took a legal tack, tapping the table. Legally, we have leverage. They signed the cooperation agreement and enjoyed the technological dividends. That obligates them to provide legitimate pathways for the talents we've helped cultivate. This is our opening. They've gained benefits. They must accept responsibilities. Snape's voice was cold. If we go public, subtlety ends. This becomes a showdown with the entire traditional wizarding establishment. Are we prepared for that? Jason rose and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, where the distant spires of Hogwarts were visible against the horizon. We're not here to overthrow anyone. We're here to build. He turned, focused and sharp. We will create official, recognized educational institutions, not secret training classes, so every awakened person can live openly and honorably in the magical world. He brought up a new projection with clear strategic steps. First, establish superpower academies as transitional educational institutions. Give these 500,000 people a legal place to study and a temporary identity. Second, use academic achievement and practical contributions to pressure the ministries of magic into recognizing their wizarding status. Third, found Dawn Academy to provide the highest standard of arcane education, so these people can not only integrate, but also lead. Sirius whistled. Good plan. Step by step, get things done without forcing everyone into outright conflict. Dumbledore considered. The second step is crucial. How do we make the ministries have no choice but to acknowledge them? With strength, Jason said simply. We will leverage educational excellence and the value of the talents we develop to force their hand. He outlined the operational plan. Simultaneously, open Superpower Academy branches in major cities around the globe. Use our teleportation network and international contacts to expand quickly. Establish unified teaching standards and a certification system. The proven quality of our graduates will be our brand. Then put those graduates to work. Let them tackle real problems in the magical world and demonstrate their worth. Draco raised the practical question. Where do we find enough teachers? Global expansion will require a huge faculty. I've already thought of that, Jason said with a smile. Among the first several thousand awakened people, the most outstanding will become our core teachers. Combine them with our international partners and the staff we already have. And remember, our interdimensional adventurers, their practical experience will be far more valuable than textbook theory. Hermione brightened. We can build a complete curriculum, basic theory to advanced application, combat skills to academic research. Everyone will be able to find a path. Lucius reminded them of resources. What about money? Establishing schools worldwide won't be cheap. Finance isn't the problem. Jason waved, bringing up a fiscal report. The figures made Lucius arch an eyebrow. Profits from planar trade and technological cooperation will sustain this plan for at least 10 years. Beyond that, the academy system itself will generate revenue, tuition, research grants, technology transfers. Dumbledore stroked his beard. In effect, you're creating an entirely new system of magical education, independent of the old. Exactly, Jason agreed. The traditional system is outdated and can't keep pace. We need education for the future. Teaching magic, yes, but also teaching them how to think and create. Snape's mouth curled into a thin, sharp smile. When this system takes hold, traditional schools will face a mortal blow to their standing. They won't go quietly. Let them come, Jason said, quietly but unmistakably. Competition breeds progress. If they reform, we'll cooperate. If they cling to the past, history will judge them. They worked through the night. By dawn, a detailed plan for the Global Superpower Academy network lay on the table. Jason turned to the main console. Zero, initiate the recognition plan. Received, Zero answered, its tone steady. Recognition plan initiated. Global Superpower Academy preparations underway. Site selection evaluation commencing. Teacher recruitment plan launched. Curriculum system finalization in progress. Jason stood at the window, watching Hogwarts bathed in morning light. From this day on, those living in the gray zones would have a real future. They would no longer have to hide or fear. They could learn openly and grow with dignity. They'll come at us, Hermione said quietly, joining him. The backlash from the traditionalists will be fierce. I've been waiting for this, Jason said, an aggressive smile returning to his face after a long time. It's time to show them what true arcane education looks like. 1 week later, through Floating City's channels, a single message arrived simultaneously at every magical news desk in the world. Floating City formally announced the establishment of a global superpower academy system open to all magically awakened individuals, regardless of origin or bloodline. The announcement detonated across the magical world. Conservatives denounced it as sacrilege and an assault on sacred traditions. Reformers hailed it as a historic advance. For the 500,000 awakened people, it lit a beacon called hope for the first time in their lives. The landscape of magical education had irrevocably shifted. Amid the clamor, a new era began. Jason stood on the highest point of the floating city, watching the horizon where new academies would soon rise. Countless young lives would be free to unleash their talents in the sunlight. That future, without discrimination, judged only by opportunity and potential, had arrived. The Floating City Construction Planning Center. A giant holographic Earth hung in midair, slowly rotating. 50 points of light flickered across the continents. Zero, confirm the construction scale, Jason ordered from the control panel. Received, Zero's electronic voice replied. 50 major cities globally will simultaneously establish branch campuses of the Superpower Academy. Each branch will have a capacity of 1,000 to 3,000 students, depending on local densities of awakened individuals. Estimated total capacity, 150,000. Hermione poked her head out from a pile of blueprints that nearly buried her. The standardized design is finished. With a wave of her hand, several huge architectural plans unfolded in the air. The style is unified, modern and minimalist, with subtle magical details. From the outside, it looks like any high-tech headquarters, so it won't attract ordinary attention. Inside, every inch is tailored for magic education. Draco leaned in. Standard facilities include meditation rooms, elemental training grounds, theory classrooms, and laboratories. Each campus will also have independent combat training arenas and libraries. All equipment uses the latest Floating City tech to ensure consistent teaching quality across branches. Jason nodded and shifted his gaze. What about faculty? The training plan is ready, Snape said, approaching with a slim list in hand. We'll assign 50 of our top first-tier arcanists from the Floating City to serve as deans, 1 per branch. Each campus will have 5 to 10 full-time teachers, all top talents we've trained. We'll also recruit and locally train teaching assistants to maintain standards while cultivating local expertise. All funds and resources are in place, Lucius added, speaking like the financier he was. Cooperation agreements with governments have been signed. They provide construction land and some startup capital. The Floating City will cover the remainder, around 20 billion galleons. I expect a return on investment within 3 years once the system is operational. Jason scanned the data and felt reassured. Timeline. 10 campuses in the first batch will be completed and ready within 2 months. Zero displayed a dense construction progress chart on the hologram. London, Paris, Berlin, New York, Moscow, Tokyo, Beijing, Sydney, Cairo, and São Paulo. The remaining 40 will follow within 6 months. We've assigned the best construction teams, blending magic with technology, making us over 10 times faster than traditional methods. Jason paused, letting his eyes rest on each person in the room. Excellent. Let's make London the first model project. It must be perfect. Central London, on the banks of the Thames. On a vacant lot, a modern building was rising with fierce speed. Hermione stood on a temporary command platform, her wand flicking. Arcane energy shaped into an invisible giant hand, slotting building materials into place. Accelerated construction charm. The site's construction rate surged. Your craft just keeps getting wilder, Draco remarked. A portal opened beside Hermione and Jason stepped through. This is our first showcase, he said. Hermione wiped sweat from her brow, eyes bright. It has to be the best. She pointed at the rising structure. From the street, it's a regular high-tech company headquarters. No one will think twice, but everything inside is designed for us. Jason inspected the exterior, a special composite cladding that was attractive and provided passive magical protection. The 12-story layout had clearly planned functions for each floor. Floors 1 through 3 are basic teaching areas. Meditation rooms, theory classrooms, and some small labs, Hermione said. 4 to 6 are advanced training, with elemental grounds and combat simulation rooms. 7 to 9 are research, with top-tier experimental equipment. 10 to 12 are administration and teacher dorms. There are 3 underground levels, a super-large training arena, and the library. Well designed, Jason approved. What's capacity? At full capacity, this branch will house 2,000 students, Draco replied. That's more than enough for London's awakened population. If needed, it can be expanded to 3,000. A middle-aged man in a suit hurried over. Mr. Jason, is construction on schedule? William, the government liaison, smiled broadly. Very smoothly. Barring setbacks, it will be operational in a month. The government has prepared for the opening. The public narrative is special talent training institution, and the media have been briefed for positive coverage. After all, training youth with special talents benefits society. How is recruitment going? Jason asked. Hectic, Hermione said, bringing up figures. In the London area alone, over 5,000 awakened individuals have applied. We're screening, prioritizing strong foundations and younger applicants. For the first batch, we plan to admit 1,000 students, divided into 20 classes. And the curriculum, Jason continued. Snape, who had been nearby, answered, 4 foundational courses, magic theory, elemental control, meditation techniques, and introduction to potions. 4 advanced tracks, combat skills, arcane applications, planar knowledge, and team collaboration. Students choose specializations based on talent, battle mages, scholars, potion masters, or alchemists. Each has a dedicated training path. A quiet pride warmed Jason, from vague idea to concrete plan. What's the media saying? William's excitement returned. Global outlets are lining up. BBC, The Times, The Guardian are all eager. Many want feature coverage and to follow day-to-day academy life. He added with a note of caution, we'll strictly control access. No core magic content will be leaked. Appropriate exposure builds our brand, Jason said, but confidentiality is non-negotiable. Zero's voice chimed in. Master, construction reports from other cities have been compiled. Paris, 78% complete. Berlin, 82%. New York's approval process is more complicated. Progress at 65%. Overall, the first 10 campuses will meet the deadline. Excellent. Keep it up. Jason addressed the group. We are creating a new era. These academies aren't just schools. They are signals. They will prove the awakened are not a threat, but a driving force for social progress. Hermione stepped close, eyes shining. Think about it, Jason. When all 50 academies are open and hundreds of thousands of awakened people have formal education, the world will change. That's our goal. We won't just change the marginalized fate of awakened individuals, Jason said, looking toward the skyline. We'll challenge prejudice and help them become part of society's backbone, but we also need to be prepared for resistance. Draco's reminder was steady. Traditional factions in the magical world won't watch this without trying to interfere. Let them come, Jason replied calmly. We have funding, people, and a righteous purpose. Most importantly, we have the support of the awakened. When they see their children thriving here, opposing voices will look small. As evening fell, the London site glowed under floodlights. Workers labored through the night, every beam and brick bearing the hopes of many. Jason stood on a high platform and looked out over the activity. Soon this place would be full of laughter and learning, young people discovering power, finding belonging, and gaining a dignified future. Master, Zero's voice reported again. Global media are watching. The Daily Prophet's editorial headline reads, The Great Revolution in Magic Education. Another outlet warns this could completely overturn the traditional order. Our impact is greater than expected. Jason smiled. Good. Controversy brings attention. If we succeed, criticism will turn to praise. A month later, the London Superpower Academy officially opened. Reporters from around the world crowded the ceremony, cameras flashing. Jason stood on the podium, facing 1,000 eager young faces. Welcome to the Superpower Academy, he said, his voice amplified by magic. Here you will learn to control your power. More importantly, you will learn to use that power to protect others and to build this world. Remember, the meaning of power is protection, not display. Thunderous applause met him. In those young eyes burned the first embers of a new beginning, an opportunity to grow freely and become part of a future that finally had room for them. 308. The comprehensive establishment of the education system and unexpected discoveries in plane exploration. 3 months later, in the highest council chamber of the floating city, a giant holographic screen streamed a steady flood of good news from around the world. Zero. Summarize it, Jason said from the main seat, pride plain in his voice. Command confirmed, Zero replied, its voice echoing through the chamber. All 50 Superpower Academy branches worldwide are complete and operational. Total registered students in the first cohort, 103,847. First-round teaching assessment, 78% excellent, 2% failure. Average student magical power growth, 347%. Core practical skill mastery rate, 91%. Hermione nearly leapt from her chair. Jason, you have to see how the children have changed, she cried. 3 months ago, most of them couldn't even perform the simplest levitation charm. Now they're manipulating elemental magic, and some are already studying the fundamentals of arcane theory. Draco stepped forward, his excitement obvious. More importantly, governments have reversed their stance. The British Ministry of Magic issued official recognition for all graduates yesterday. France, Germany, and Italy followed. Even the United States Magic Congress, always the most stubborn, is discussing similar measures. Lucius added, once identity was settled, society's reaction was massive. Awakened people are no longer viewed as monsters, but as valuable talents. Mercenary guilds and official agencies are actively recruiting our graduates. Professor Dumbledore stroked his beard, his eyes twinkling behind his spectacles. A new social order is forming. The old talk of pure-blood supremacy is giving way to a new reality. Power determines status. This may be the most fundamental change the magical world has seen in centuries. How is Dawn Academy coming along? Jason asked. Final stages, Snape reported, appearing beside them. Facilities are ready. The teaching staff will be core members from the floating city. The curriculum covers advanced arcane theory, planar exploration, and strategic command, the most cutting-edge subjects. Classes will begin in the autumn. The first cohort will be limited to the top 500 talents. Their celebration was cut short when an alarm slashed through the chamber. Master! Emergency alert! Zero's voice tightened. The planar detection system has picked up an anomalous signal. Jason rose immediately. What is it? We have detected an unprecedented super-large planar signal, Zero said, the tremor in its tone betraying the data's severity. Its crystal wall thickness is more than 10 times that of any known ordinary plane. Magic concentration readings are off the charts, beyond the measurement limits of every instrument we have. We also scanned highly structured energy traces consistent with an advanced civilization. Most puzzlingly, the energy operates according to a structure unlike any magic system we recognize. Hermione frowned. Does that mean? It could be an entirely new power system, Jason finished. His eyes brightened. Or a civilization far more advanced in magical practice than ours. Draco asked bluntly, Can we go there? That's the problem, Zero replied. The crystal wall is too thick for conventional traversal. We can only find specific planar nodes and penetrate through localized weak points. Those nodes have extremely low throughput. Only one person can pass at a time. The energy cost is enormous. A traversal will consume roughly 100 times the resources of a normal planar jump, and due to the wall's interference, communication will be severely weakened or cut off entirely. Whoever goes must be able to handle every contingency independently. Dumbledore's voice carried concern. Jason, this is exceedingly risky. An unknown high magic plane could hide dangers beyond our imagination. Precisely because of that, its value is undeniable, Jason said decisively. If it truly hosts an advanced magical civilization, the discoveries, New magic theories, new power systems, new technologies could be immeasurable. This could be the most important world we've ever encountered. Sirius stepped forward. Who will go? I will, Jason answered without hesitation. I'm the one most prepared to handle whatever waits on the other side. And as master of the floating city, this exploration is my responsibility. Hermione grabbed his hand. I'm coming with you. No, Jason shook his head. The passage only admits one person, and the risk is too great. I won't let you take it. She looked as if she might argue, voice breaking. Then don't go. I don't want to lose you. Jason brushed her cheek with his thumb. Trust me, I'll come back. The floating city needs you. Our academies have just been established, and Dawn Academy is about to open. Those things need you here. Snape, composed as ever, pulled their attention back to the practical. If Jason must go, our plan must be foolproof. Equipment, supplies, emergency protocols, we must detail every contingency. Agreed. Jason turned to Zero. Begin planning immediately. Prepare the highest grade detection instruments and protective artifacts, and calculate the optimal traversal time. Received, Zero replied. Estimated 3 days to complete all preparations. The planar node will reach its most stable state in 72 hours. At that time, you'll have a 6-hour traversal window. Lucius spoke up, practical as always. Jason, while you're gone, how will governance of the floating city be managed? Jason's assignments were crisp. Hermione will handle daily administration. Professor Dumbledore will assist with major decisions. Draco will manage external relations. Snape will oversee the academies. Sirius will be in charge of overall security and defense. Everyone will perform their duties to ensure continuity. Hermione swallowed her emotions and nodded. I understand, but promise me, if you face any danger you can't handle, you'll retreat. No discovery is worth your life. I promise, Jason said, holding her tightly. This journey is for the floating city and for the future of the entire magical world. If that plane contains a higher civilization, it could lift us all to a completely new level. Dumbledore sighed. You have our full support. Remember, you are never alone. The entire floating city and the whole magical world stands behind you. For the next 3 days, the floating city ran like a precision instrument. Cutting-edge detection equipment was assembled and calibrated. The strongest protective artifacts were reforged and enchanted. Emergency protocols for every extreme scenario were rehearsed until they were automatic. Jason made his final preparations, mental, magical, and technical, for a journey into the unknown. At dawn on the 3rd day, the traversal window opened. Jason stood at the center of the teleportation array, surrounded by the people who mattered most to him. Ready? Zero confirmed. Jason took one last look at Hermione. His eyes said everything his voice could not. Wait for me. I will. She bit her lip and forced her tears back. You must come back. The teleportation device activated. A blinding white light swallowed Jason. When it cleared, the spot where he had stood was empty. He had stepped through the crystal barrier and into that mysterious plane. A new adventure had begun. 309. The power suppression and polytheism of the other world. As the white light faded, Jason's feet sank into soft, humus-rich earth. He stumbled. It wasn't a teleportation side effect. This world felt heavy. The air was thick and viscous. Breathing it was like filling his lungs with syrup. Motes of colored light drifted through the air. They weren't an illusion. He could scoop up a handful and feel their warm weight on his fingertips. Damn it, the magic density here. Jason muttered. Compared to this place, Earth was practically barren. He tried to draw on his power to adapt faster. The next moment he gasped. His chest felt crushed, as if an invisible hand had squeezed his heart. Every grain of dust, every gust of wind pushed against him, resisting. The demigod power inside him suddenly felt leaden, trapped in thick, unyielding shackles. The world was suppressing him. It couldn't tolerate beings that were too strong. He frowned and pushed again, only to feel the pressure mount, pinning him to a line he couldn't cross. They've got tricks, he said under his breath. He stopped fighting and fished a compass-like device from his pack. The needle spun wildly. Runes on the dial flashed like a fever. Readouts scrolled in his head as the device calibrated. Magic concentration, Earth Standard 57. Elemental activity, off the charts. Warning, 9 unknown energies detected. Warning, all known elements carry. Divine power imprint? The last line froze his hand. divine power imprint. That wasn't good. It meant every ounce of power here had an owner. Without warning, the sky seemed to press down. It wasn't a single force. Multiple vast alien energies tore and wrestled above the clouds, each distinct, none conceding ground to the others. Jason extended his mental senses. 7, maybe 8, different gods, like landlords staking out the heavens. Not united, he thought. He pushed his mind outward, sweeping the land. The feedback chilled him. The racial distribution across the continent was absurdly neat, territory partitioned by invisible borders. The central and eastern regions were human lands, cities and hamlets wrapped in a sacred white glow. Dense western forests belonged to the elves, saturated in natural green. The northern wastes were for the orc tribes, the air burning red. Southern mountains belonged to dwarves, steeped in earthy yellow. Smaller races had their own little plots, obediently fenced in. It was a grid, neat, deliberate, like a map painted by unseen hands. This isn't an empire, he thought. It's a ranch. From the woods below came the clash of steel and a human shout. Jason melted into the canopy and crept closer. In a small clearing, a skirmish was ending, a squad of human soldiers in silver-white armor hacking at elven rangers. Human blades gleamed with white light, sending out a scorching smell. The elves drew power from the earth, summoning vines and thorns, only to have them severed as the white light cleaved the ground clean. "Heretics," the lead human captain bellowed, voice hoarse. "Under the holy light, no filth shall remain. Back to your rotten forests, pointy ears," a soldier snarled. A wounded elven ranger spat blood and roared, "This is neutral ground. By what right do you dogs of false gods cross the line?" "Children of the Mother of Nature will never yield," another elf replied. The yelling didn't save them. The elves were driven back, leaving several dead as they fled into the trees. Jason watched from above, expression cold. Racial conflict, religious enmity, territorial disputes. He already had a rough script for this world. Each race worshipped its own god, and those gods were not benevolent forces. He studied the settlements. Human houses were plastered with crosses and angel reliefs. Elven tree homes bore moons and natural runes. Orc camps bristled with terrifying totem poles. Dwarven fortresses were emblazoned with hammers and mountain sigils. They weren't just believers, they were penned. These gods were ranchers. They'd drawn fences to keep their flocks separate, then occasionally thrown in sparks to make the herds fight. Hatred, fear, rage, despair, those were the harvest. "Even worse than I thought," Jason murmured. He sheathed his device and planned his next move. First, he had to learn this ranch's rules. First, he needed an identity. He uncorked a small vial and drank. His bones crackled, his flesh settled and reshaped. A few seconds later, an ordinary human mage stood in his place. Brown hair, an unremarkable face lost in a crowd, a plain gray robe, and a cheap holy light cross hung about his neck. "A wandering holy light mage," he said. That would be enough to get into the city. He adjusted the robe and headed toward the human city. Not far along, a caravan noticed the cross. "Esteemed mage, are you heading to Holy Light City?" a merchant asked eagerly, bowing slightly. Jason nodded, making his voice a little hoarse. "Just passing through. I wanted to see the Holy City." "You're in luck," the merchant beamed. "The Holy City is our sacred center. Just recently, the Holy Light God sent a divine oracle. He ordered us to redouble our efforts to purge the heretics. The church will make good use of a devout mage like you," another in the caravan added. Jason's heart skipped. Divine oracle. Purge heretics. "Can you tell me more about this oracle?" he asked, feigning curiosity. The merchant lowered his voice, eyes shining. "It said that within a year, every infidel on the borders who does not worship the holy light must be purified. Elves, orcs, dwarves, none shall be spared," another caravan member declared. "Only then will the glory of the holy light shine over the whole continent," the first man finished. Jason kept his face blank while his hands clenched inside his sleeves. Racial cleansing. Had the gods gone mad? "Have the other races reacted?" he asked. "How could they not?" a trader replied. "My cousin in the southern mountains says the dwarf god of forging called on them to pick up their hammers and crush any invaders. The orc war god gave one order, kill." A man spat the word. "The elves, mother of nature or whatever, wants the forest to swallow every enemy," a woman said. Jason understood then. It wasn't a single deity run amok. It was a consortium of gods celebrating in unison. They wanted a full-scale war to sweep the continent so they could harvest the emotions it produced: fear, hatred, despair. A meticulously planned, grand harvest. Jason's knuckles cracked inside his sleeves. These self-styled gods treated the world as a farm, fatten the livestock, then starve them of peace and provoke a war to reap a bloody crop. Systematic exploitation in the name of divinity. He swore quietly, "I'll tear this damned ranch down." But reality hit. His power was suppressed to well below third tier in this place. Confronting a cabal of gods now would be suicide. He needed allies, forces inside this world willing to resist. Hours later, Holy Light City rose on the horizon, a massive white metropolis with impossibly high walls etched in dense, glowing runes. In the center, a cathedral spire pierced the clouds. Its cross at the peak radiated blinding light, draping the city in a reverent halo. Majestic, solemn, holy, at least to the eye. Jason only felt the blood and wails trapped beneath that sanctified sheen. He straightened the cheap cross on his chest and walked toward the city gate. "Let's see just how holy you are," he said quietly. 3 and 10. In-depth investigation of Holy Light City. The city gates of Holy Light City were even more magnificent than Jason had imagined. 30-meter-high white walls were carved with glowing holy runes that pulsed slowly like living hearts. At the gate, 2 ranks of fully armored Holy Light Knights stood at attention. Their white armor glittered in the sun. Jason followed the merchant caravan, approaching slowly, watching the guards out of the corner of his eye. Every face in the line wore the same fanatical piety, a blind obedience that made his skin crawl. "Next," the commander bellowed. It was Jason's turn. He stepped forward and bowed. "Blessings, Commander." The commander swept a hard gaze over him, lingering on the cross at Jason's throat. "A holy light magic user?" "Yes," Jason said. "I have wandered for years and wished to make a pilgrimage to the holy city." The commander's whole tone changed, suddenly obsequious. "Servant of the holy light, welcome." He bowed deeply. "Be sure to report to the Grand Cathedral. Father Blue Robe is gathering all devout magic users to prepare for the coming holy war." Holy war. Jason felt a cold tightening in his chest, but forced an eager expression onto his face. "A holy war? Is this the will of the holy light god?" "Of course," the commander cried, eyes bright with fanaticism. "The divine oracle has spoken. We must purge all heretics from the continent. Elves, orcs, dwarves, none shall be spared." "Praise holy light," Jason echoed with feigned fervor. "I am willing to offer everything for the holy light." "Good, good." The commander's excitement was almost childish. "Devout magic users like you are exactly what we need. Hurry into the city. Holy light be with you." Jason passed the inspection without trouble. As he stepped through the gate, a commotion erupted behind him. "Stop, you mongrel!" He turned to see a half-elf being dragged out by 2 guards. The man looked about 20, dressed in plain linen, fear written across his face. I'm human. I believe in the holy light," the half-elf stammered. "Still daring to disguise yourself? Impure blood is heresy," the commander sneered as he drew his sword. "Holy light tolerates no defilement." The blade flashed. Blood spattered the flagstones. The half-elf crumpled, eyes wide with despair. Around them, the crowd broke into cheers. "Well killed! Purify the heretics! Long live holy light!" Jason's fingers tightened until his nails bit into his palms. These people were monsters. He forced himself to turn away and move with the crowd into the city. This was not the time to reveal himself. Inside Holy Light City was even grander. Broad flagstone avenues flanked white buildings emblazoned with holy symbols, towering spires that stretched toward the sky. Everyone he passed wore that same fanatic expression. He found a small inn in the cathedral quarter and took a room. The owner, a plump, middle-aged man, broke into a wide smile when he saw Jason's cross. "Sir Magic User, you've come at just the right time." "How so?" Jason asked. "The Purification Legion is about to march." The innkeeper rubbed his hands together. "They're targeting the elf villages on the border, clearing them out, leaving none behind." "When?" "In a few days. Father Blue Robe says the holy light cannot wait. God's glory must spread across every inch of the land." Jason nodded, feigning interest. "I want to serve the holy light too." "You should go to the Grand Cathedral," the owner urged. "Father Blue Robe is recruiting devout magic users for the Purification Legion." Night fell and Jason slipped out to scout. He hadn't walked far before he sensed something else, A vast, subtle divine surveillance suffused the city. Invisible tendrils of sensing power threaded through every alley and building, probing thoughts and deeds. Any doubt of the holy light, any heretical thought, would be detected at once. Jason kept his mental presence steady and moved in the shadows. That network explained the crowd's extremism. Not everyone truly believed, most simply dared not disbelieve. Doubt was snuffed before it could form. He stopped at a tavern crowded with soldiers and townsfolk. He took a corner seat and listened. "I heard the elves are already mobilizing their army," one soldier murmured. "What's there to fear?" Another thumped his chest. "Holy light is with us. Those pointy-eared ones are nothing." "Easy for you to say, but elf magic? Shut up!" The first soldier snapped, suddenly nervous. "You're not allowed to question the power of the holy light." They all felt the shadow of the city's divine surveillance. Jason kept listening and slowly stitched together a clearer picture. The Purification Legion would number 3,000 Holy Light Knights and 1,000 Holy Light magic users. Marcus, a zealous commander and a close confidant of Father Blue Robe, would lead them against several border elf villages. As he took in the news, the tavern fell silent. Heads turned toward the doorway. A figure in a dark cloak entered. Jason's pupils tightened. An elf. Pointed ears and an elegant bearing, an aura that gave her away despite the human disguise. She carried herself like one gathering human intelligence. She walked calmly to the bar and ordered a drink, but her concealment was imperfect. A priest jumped up and pointed. "Heretic, your ears!" The elf's face went pale, and she bolted. "Catch her! She's an elf spy!" The tavern erupted. A dozen soldiers lunged to seize her. She drew a dagger and fought, but was quickly surrounded. Jason moved before the soldiers could finish. He slipped a subtle illusion into the air, and the men began to see things, hallucinations that made the elf appear to vanish. "Where did she go?" they cried, frantically searching. In the chaos, Jason slipped through the back and pulled the elf with him. They ran through narrow alleys until they were sure they were safe, and then stopped, breathless. "Thank you," the elf said, panting. "Why did you save me?" Jason looked at her. "The true meaning of the holy light is salvation, not destruction." She blinked, stunned. It countered a lifetime of slogans. Do you really believe in the holy light?" she asked, tentative. "I believe in justice," Jason replied. "What they're doing here is not justice." Her eyes brightened with a fragile hope. "Is there still hope for this world?" Jason felt anger rise at the image of so many lives crushed for some divine delusion. "Yes," he said, "as long as people are willing to resist, hope won't die." She searched his face, then pressed a small, leaf-shaped badge into his hand. "If you truly want to help, find this mark and someone will contact you." Then she slipped away into the night. Jason held the badge, feeling warmth and a pulse of relief. There was a resistance, after all. He pocketed the token and headed back to the inn, unaware of a pair of cold eyes watching him from the shadows. A man in a white robe bore the insignia of the Inquisitors on his chest. "Interesting," the man murmured. "A holy light magic user helping a heretic escape?" He turned and melted into the darkness. The next morning, Jason went to the Grand Cathedral. The building was more awe-inspiring up close. Massive spires, a facade that seemed to glow with its own holy light. Inside, a gigantic statue of the holy light god dominated the altar, gazing down on the faithful. Jason blended into the crowd and listened to Father Blue Robe speak. "Children of the holy light," Father Blue Robe's voice rang from the high platform. "The god's will has descended. We must purge the heretics from this continent." "Praise holy light," the congregation shouted as one. Jason joined in with hollow enthusiasm, a cold sneer hidden behind his mouth. These people were not convinced. They were puppets of a god and a surveillance system. After the sermon, Father Blue Robe announced the recruitment of the Purification Legion. Jason stepped forward. "Father Blue Robe," he said, "I am willing to offer everything for the holy light." Father Blue Robe regarded him and nodded. "Very good. I must test your piety." "Please," Jason replied, "recite the 3rd chapter of the Holy Light scripture." Jason's heart skipped. He had no real knowledge of their scripture, but he kept his voice steady and improvised. "Holy light shines upon the earth, dispelling darkness. Believers, with pious hearts, must cleanse the world of evil." He watched Father Blue Robe's face as he spoke. To his surprise, the priest not only accepted it, but seemed pleased. Very good. Your understanding is deeper than many of our priests. Jason let out a private breath of relief. Their faith's outward form was stronger than their doctrine. Father Blue Robe asked about his specialties. Elemental magic and some healing spells, Jason replied. Excellent. Father Blue Robe clapped. We need talents like yours. From today, you are a member of the Purification Legion. We leave tomorrow to clear out those elf villages. Jason smiled outwardly while inside he calculated how to sabotage the campaign. A voice called from behind him. Sir Magic User, please wait. He turned to see the same Inquisitor from the night before stride forward, white robes immaculate. The insignia on his chest marked him as an Inquisitor. I am Inquisitor Silas, the man said. I am very interested in you. How may I help you, Inquisitor? Jason kept his tone deferential. Silas's smile was thin and cold. Nothing now, only that the Purification Legion is of great importance. We must ensure every member is a truly devout believer. 311. Undercurrent, 2 in 1. The light in the cathedral's confessional was pitifully dim, oppressively so. Faint rays filtered down from impossibly high stained glass windows, cutting the dust into slanted sheets that hung in the air like drifting souls. It felt sacred and suffocating at once. Jason sat on the cold bench, the oak slab before him solid and unyielding like a barrier. Across from him, Inquisitor Silas folded his hands on the table, elbows planted, gray eyes calm and hard, unremarkable at first glance, but carrying a piercing insistence that probed like a needle. Jason Lester, correct? Silas's voice was flat as stagnant water. Yes, Inquisitor. Jason bowed once, the posture of a humble wandering mage. You were at the Drunken Knight Tavern last night. It wasn't a question so much as a statement. Yes, Jason didn't deny it. There was no point. Silas leaned forward, and the pressure in the room thickened, like a mountain leaning in. Then explain this. How did an elven spy vanish into thin air while surrounded by over a dozen Holy Light soldiers? Jason felt his heart skip, but his face stayed composed. Sir, the scene was chaotic. Soldiers rushed forward, and then she was gone. He paused, feigning a struggle to recall. Maybe it was her magic. I've heard elves are very skilled with illusions. It was a plausible, untestable direction. No witnesses could prove otherwise. Silas's lips curved into a cold, humorless smile. Illusions? In Holy Light City? Under the noses of over a dozen soldiers? Mage Lester, you underestimate how the Holy Light suppresses heretical magics. Petty tricks would be snuffed out. He tapped the table. Thump, thump, thump. Each sound landed like a blow to Jason's chest. More interestingly, Silas continued, voice sharpened with something like hunger, post-investigation shows the tavern-goers' memories grew muddled. They recall the elf being surrounded, and then nothing. This is not an elven illusion. It's a sophisticated mental interference. Jason's pupils narrowed. Silas was sharper than he'd thought. Inquisitor, are you implying? He tested. I'm implying, Silas said, his jaw to a hiss, that only a mage present could have done this, and among the mages there last nightly new face. The air seemed to thicken. Even the motes of dust hung motionless. Jason felt Silas's probing will, like a slick serpent trying to pry open his mind. He met the stare with the bruised, submissive look he'd practiced, the perfect performance of indignation and fear. Sir, suspect me? I traveled thousands of miles to answer the call of the Holy War. I swore to serve the Holy Light. How could I aid a heretical spy? His voice was low, wronged, and convincingly devout. I'm a wandering mage. My mind may be more versed in theory than a priest's, but that does not make me a traitor. Silas watched him, every twitch, every inhale, until only the sound of their breathing filled the room. After an unbearable stretch of silence, Silas leaned back and withdrew his pressure. Perhaps I was overthinking, he said coolly. But remember, in Holy Light City, the Inquisition's eyes are everywhere. Any disloyalty to the Holy Light will be met with the severest purification. I understand, sir. Jason lowered his head. Relief flashing through him, he forced a pious smile. Praise Holy Light. You're dismissed. Legion assignments will be posted shortly. Silas waved him off like shooing a fly. Jason bowed, turned, and left. Only when the heavy wooden door thudded shut and the cold gaze was gone did he let out a long breath. Sweat soaked his back. He'd barely skated past exposure. The seed of suspicion was planted, though. From now on, every step would have to be measured. He didn't return to the inn right away. He needed to learn the city, to probe for any clues the elf might have left. He drifted through the streets, eyes sharp, noting the city's clear three-ring structure. The core, the inner district around the cathedral, rose in glittering white stone. Its streets were immaculate, its residents clergy and knights, faces awash in pious superiority. The middle ring was commercial and prosperous. Shops crowded the boulevards, and people moved with purpose and wealth. The outer ring was the slums, narrow, muddy lanes, cramped houses stacked like tin, the air sour with rot and unwashed bodies. The people there bore no zeal, only the hollow resignation of the beaten. War's glory belonged to the upper rings. Its cost fell to the outskirts. He wandered into a busy market and paused at a vegetable stall. The vendor was an old woman, hair silver, her face creased like walnut shell. "How much for these radishes?" he asked, flipping one between his fingers. "3 coppers each, Master Mage," she replied, catching sight of the cross on his chest and forcing a servile smile. "Another war is coming. Times are hard." Jason toyed with the vegetables. The woman's smile stiffened. Then she lowered her voice until it was scarcely more than a hiss. "My youngest. He was conscripted into the Purification Legion last month. We haven't heard from him. He's only 16. Her voice threatened to break. "This is for the glory of holy light," Jason said in the dry, official tone he'd used in the confessional. "Glory?" The smile turned sour, ugly. "Glory won't fill a belly. The knights at the front eat and drink well. We scrape by on black bread. When will this damned war end?" Fear kept her from shouting, but her resentment was real and raw. Jason paid the coins and left with the thin, bitter radish. The city wasn't a monolith of righteousness. It was hollow, hollowed by those who fed on war. Night fell. Jason slipped out of the inn, ghost-like, avoiding patrols, and headed beyond the city's outer ring. He drew the leaf-shaped badge the elven woman had given him from his cloak. In the moonlight, a faint green glow pulsed from the badge, like a compass needle calling him. He followed the light into a dense forest. The trees were hush. The wind through branches sounded like quiet whispering. After about 15 minutes, the badge's glow ceased beneath a giant oak. Jason froze and scanned the shadows. "Come out. I know you're there," he called softly into the dark. "You are perceptive." The voice came from high in the tree. A dark figure dropped down without rustling a leaf and landed in front of him. An elven man in leather armor stood with a short bow strung and an arrow tipped at Jason's throat. "Who are you?" "Where did you get this badge?" the elf asked coldly. "A friend gave it to me." Jason spread his hands in a non-threatening gesture. "She told me to find you." The elf's gaze fell on the holy light cross at Jason's chest with open suspicion, as if it were a stain. "A holy light mage wanting to help us? Don't joke. Are you a spy sent by the church?" "If I were a spy, the Inquisition wouldn't send one man to the woods," Jason replied calmly. His steady tone seemed to catch the elf off guard. "What are you here for?" "Cooperation." Jason met the elf's sharp eyes. "I know the Purification Legion is marching at dawn tomorrow, heading for your village." The elf's pupils narrowed. "That was secret intelligence, Gra." He hesitated as if weighing something heavy, then sheathed his bow. "Follow me." They threaded deeper into the woods until they reached a hidden cave. Inside, magic lamps cast a soft light over a group gathered around a table. An elder elf poring over a map looked up. This was Elrond, the Free Alliance liaison in the area. "Elrond, he brought our badge and knows about the Legion's operation," the scouting elf reported. Elrond studied Jason, eyes sharp with experience. A holy light mage opposing the will of the holy light god. The question hung in the cave. "What I oppose is not the holy light," Jason said, voice ringing. "It's the slaughter carried out in its name." His gaze was steady. The high and mighty preach gods while treating people like livestock, harvesting belief with war and hatred. They're the true heretics. I'm here to overthrow that tyranny, not to help slaughter innocents. The elves exchanged stunned looks. Never had a human, much less a holy light mage, spoken so plainly. Elrond considered him long, suspicion giving way to something like hope. "What do you propose?" "I'm already enlisted in the Purification Legion. I march with them tomorrow," Jason said. "I can help from inside." "Just passing along information won't change anything," a young ranger scoffed. "I'm not just relaying intel." Jason's smile was cold. I intend to destroy this purification operation. Elrond pressed. How? Jason stepped forward. A concentrated pulse of arcane energy gathered in his palm, crackling with raw, unnatural power. Neither fire nor frost, but something like ordered chaos. The light painted the cave in electric blue. The elves flinched back instinctively, like prey sensing a predator. I will make them turn on each other, he said, eyes bright with determination. For a moment the cave was utterly still. The idea that a disciplined, fanatically devout army could be turned inward at one stroke seemed mad. But Jason's confidence was not bravado. There was a calm conviction that made even the skeptical pause. Why should we trust you? Elrond asked finally. Jason merely closed his hand and let the arcane glow die away. He didn't give details. Instead, he accepted the gamble Elrond offered. The elder produced a detailed parchment map and a faintly glowing communication crystal and laid them before Jason. This is what we know, Elrond said. This crystal links us if we need to send a message. We need a concrete plan. Jason took the map. By candlelight in his inn-room, he traced the route the Legion would take, fingers lingering until they stopped at one location in particular, Sorrowful Canyon. The candlelight danced in his eyes, cold and quick. Tomorrow would be a long day for Holy Light City. A good show was about to begin. 3:12, Expedition and Blessings. The sky hadn't yet brightened, a thin, chilly light spreading over the cold flagstones of Holy Light City. The great plaza before the gate was already full. 4,000 soldiers of the Purification Legion stood in tight ranks, their silver-white armor chillingly bright in the pre-dawn glow. The air tasted of sweat and rust and something sharper, fanaticism. For Holy Light, purify the heretics, leave no blade of grass. The cries rose and fell like waves, threatening to unsettle the sky itself. Jason stood in the first squad of the third company, expression blank as he watched the faces around him, twisted with fervor, eyes alight. Captain Marcus was at the squad's head, fist raised, shouting hoarsely. Spittle flecked his lips. His zeal was louder than everyone else's combined. Jason kept his head down, blending in perfectly with the lunacy. He watched the Legion like an instrument. The command layer, blue-robed priests on tall horses, rode high and aloof, cut off from the rank and file. The next tier, men like Marcus, were the clergy's executioners, the most fanatical blades. The foot soldiers at the bottom were thoroughly brainwashed cannon fodder who knew only obedience, a flawless top-down machine of indoctrination. It had a weakness. The information gap between layers could be exploited. Depart, a blue-robed priest's order, and the heavy city gate groaned open. 4,000 boots began to move, their synchronized steps swelling into a relentless surge toward Moonlight Valley. The destruction plan had officially begun. The march was dull and steady, footfalls and the clink of armor, the soldiers' restrained breathing. Jason kept a neutral position in the middle of the formation, not so far forward as to stand out, not so far back as to lose oversight. He noticed the priests always walked at the very front, flanked by squads of elite Templars, scarcely interacting with the men behind them. They issued orders. Captains like Marcus enforced them. That gap in information was a vulnerability Jason logged away. Around noon, the Legion halted on a riverbank. Men loosened straps, drank from skins, chewed hard, dry bread. Marcus strode to the edge of the formation and bellowed, "Eat faster! The elves' magic is cunning and treacherous. Don't give them a chance to breathe." This was the opening Jason had been waiting for. He rose and went straight to Marcus. "Captain Marcus," he said, bowing slightly, humility practiced into his posture. Marcus glanced down, bored and blunt. "What is it, mage?" "I once read a passage in the Holy Light Scriptures," Jason said, taking on a solemn tone. "It warns that elves possess malicious magics that can contaminate our weapons and water. Their corruption can suppress the power of holy light within us." Marcus's brow tightened. He knew little of magic, but he distrusted anything that might weaken his troops. "Is that so?" "Yes, Captain," Jason continued, sincerity deepening. "Which is why I ask permission to bless the brothers' weapons and waterskins with holy light. It will not only strengthen our resistance to elven sorcery, but allow the sanctified power to protect us, making every strike carry a purifying effect." Those words landed like a promise. Enhanced resistance, empowered attacks, the protection of holy light. What captain wouldn't leap at that? More than that, It would lift morale. Good. Marcus slapped Jason on the shoulder. Do it. I'm going to tell the higher-ups. He hurried to the front and soon returned with an excited grin. The blue-robed priests agreed. They said you're devout and deserve commendation. Jason sneered inwardly. Those priests didn't care about him so much as about the ritual of piety. Still, the priest's approval was all Marcus needed. Marcus roared, "First squad, over here. Lester the mage will perform a pre-battle blessing." The soldiers gathered, expectant. Jason moved to the center of the clearing and inhaled slowly. The performance began. He raised his hands and intoned a self-fashioned holy light liturgy, solemn, resonant. A warm, golden radiance flowed from him, soft and sacred. The men watched, rapt, their fervor swelled. No one noticed that mixed into the holy light were particles no larger than dust, an arcane catalyst Jason had analyzed and adjusted. The dust was inert and harmless by itself. Its only function was to respond to specific mental fluctuations and light, acting like a coordinate beacon and signal amplifier. "Oh, divine radiance, purify the blade before me. Let it become a holy sword that cuts down evil. Oh, pure spring, bless this water of life. Let it cleanse body and mind, resist all defilement." As Jason chanted, he sprinkled the light mixed with the catalyst over weapons and waterskins. The ritual was overt, sincere, and reverent. Everyone present, Marcus included, melted into the solemnity. No one suspected a thing. When he finished blessing the last man, Jason feigned exhaustion, bent over, breathed once, then added casually in a voice edged with worry, "Brothers, one more thing. When I communed with the holy light, I received a revelation. Some high elves are masters of an evil transfiguration. They can take the form of our allies, sow chaos from within, and make us turn on each other. A stone into a still pond." The soldiers froze, then faces shifted into fear and anger. "What? They can do that? How vile, pointy-eared vermin. Thank you, Mage Lester. We won't be fooled." They swallowed his words like gospel. To them it wasn't rumor but prophecy. Marcus took it to heart and thumped his breastplate. "Damn it. Hear me, brothers. Keep your eyes sharp in battle. If someone near you acts strange, don't send for a report. Cut them down. Better to kill the wrong man than let a guilty one live." "Yes, Captain," the men answered as one. Suspicion slid quietly into their expressions. They began to watch each other. In the afternoon, the Legion reached the rim of Moonlight Valley. The valley was beautiful, a clear stream threaded between banks green with trees and wildflowers. To the Purification Legion, that beauty was a blot, an infestation of heresy. The leading blue-robed priest raised his command sword, pointing into the valley. His voice, amplified by magic, carried over the ranks. "Children of holy light, before you lies the last nest of elven heretics. They have defiled this land, ours by right, with their false loveliness. Today we bring holy light to every corner of this valley and purge these unrepentant heretics. With your swords, with your magic, show them who rules this continent. For holy light, for holy light." 4,000 throats merged into a single roar that made the valley tremble. The blue-robed priest's sword fell forward. "All forces, full assault! Kill!" At the command, the Legion poured into Moonlight Valley like a dam broken, driven by madness and bloodlust, each soldier eager to enact the purification. Jason moved with the crowd but did not draw close. His own weapons and waterskins had not been blessed. He watched the peaceful valley ahead and the fanatic army swelling behind him, and a colder smile touched his lips. The battle was about to begin, and the true hunter had already set his trap, waiting for the prey to thrust itself into the abyss of its own madness. "Holy light, there's something wrong with that friendly army." The cry of alarm split the air. The soldiers of the Purification Legion surged into Moonlight Valley like a pack of mad dogs unloosed from their cages. The valley's mouth was narrow. The elves took cover among trees and rocks and prepared a desperate last stand. Poison-tipped arrows thudded out of the forest shadows, finding gaps in armor and painting streaks of blood. Vines and earth spikes launched by nature magic hampered the vanguard. Against a raging wave of 4,000 men, though, the resistance looked pitiful. "Mage Corps, prepare!" A blue-robed priest barked from the rear, raising his scepter. "First round, area attack. Clear out the rats in the dark." Praise the holy light. Hundreds of mages lifted their staffs at once. Golden light gathered at the rear of the formation. charging the air with sacred energy. Jason stood at the edge of the mage camp and raised his staff too. He chanted words that sounded like the others, but his incantation built something else beneath the surface. An immense, invisible arcane array woven into the same vibrations as the holy light, an illusion to suffuse the battlefield. Sensory distortion field. Fire, the priest commanded. A hail of golden bolts screamed into the valley like a meteor shower. Trees exploded into splinters. Rock shattered into dust. Beneath that dazzling onslaught, Jason's hidden array flowed outward and activated the faint motes of magic dust that had been affixed to every soldier's weapon, water skin, and armor. Those dormant beacons, sensors, and amplifiers awoke, feeding on the clash of light and shadow, the flash of blades and the spray of blood. Kevin was blocking arrows with his shield. Beside him, Ben, a burly, bearded man, cleaved a goblin guard in two. Blood spattered Ben's blade and, caught in the holy light, reflected a sharp, eerie red. The glow flooded Kevin's eyes, and the sensory distortion field magnified and twisted it. What Kevin saw was no longer Ben's longsword, but a strange, curved elven scimitar. His mind went blank. He blinked, but the illusion tightened. "Ben, your sword," he blurted, panic cracking his voice. Ben, panting from combat, breathed heavily. In Kevin's ears, that breath was warped by the field into a low, malicious hiss, like an elven curse. Ben's familiar, blood-streaked face contorted in Kevin's vision, pointed ears, green-tinged skin. Jason's earlier warning flashed through his head like thunder. Some high elves are skilled at taking the likeness of our allies. Fear swallowed reason. "There's a mole," Kevin screamed, and without thought, plunged his longsword forward. The blade slid through Ben's breastplate. Ben stared at the tip protruding from his chest, then at Kevin's terrified, bloodshot eyes. "You," he managed and fell. Warm blood sprayed Kevin's face. First blood was a droplet that hit a powder keg. Chaos erupted. "Kevin's gone mad. He killed Ben." No, his ears turned pointy. "An elf, a shapeshifter, has infiltrated. Praise the holy light. The prophet was right." In the fevered, fanatical minds of the soldiers, rumor transformed into certainty. Suspicion raced like wildfire. One man, seeing a squad's standard twist in the light of an explosion, convinced himself the holy light cross had turned into an elven moon deer totem. "The 7th squad has betrayed us. They're elves in disguise. Open fire." Archers spun and loosed arrows into the backs of comrades who were still pressing forward. The 7th squad took casualties from behind and wheeled in shocked fury, only to see the hostile visage of the 3rd squad. "Bastards, what are you doing?" The 7th's captain roared. But in the 3rd squad's eyes, the 7th's surprise was the furious exposure of imposters. "Kill the traitors," came the cry. "Purify them." Without orders, the battlefield became a maelstrom of fratricide. Squads that had marched shoulder to shoulder began hacking at one another hundreds of meters from the elven line. Squad A saw Squad B act suspiciously and struck. Squad C saw A and B fighting, and assuming everyone was compromised, opened fire on both. The command structure froze. Shouting officers could not stem a tide driven by what the men believed their eyes told them, and the deep-rooted conviction that any odd glance or gasp could hide an enemy. The elven sentinels, who had prepared for a deadly charge, gaped at the sight before them. The iron tide never reached their lines. It had split and devoured itself. Human soldiers who had roared so fiercely a moment prior now turned the most vicious strikes on their own kin. Flesh and blood flew. Blades flashed. What's happening?" A young elven ranger whispered, bow slack in his hands. Did our trap go off?" "We didn't set a trap," another replied. On a high ridge, Elrond watched the impossible scene and felt a chill. Jason's calm face rose unbidden in his mind. "I will make them kill each other." The thought landed like a curse. This wasn't ordinary magic. It was the work of a devil. Jason stood in the rear mage camp and watched the havoc he'd orchestrated. The irony bit him. The holy light believers, seized by suspicion and fear, were purifying one another. There was nothing the blue-robed priests could do. They shouted in fury and disbelief as discipline collapsed at the front. "Captain, look!" A soldier from the 1st squad pointed to the 4th squad, where men under the field's influence staggered and slowed, some turning in place as if dizzy. Marcus saw that wobble and took it as proof. "They've been infiltrated." His eyes flared red. Jason's warning, his own command to kill rather than let one escape, hammered in his head. A righteous fury seized him. He lifted his battle axe and bellowed, "The fourth squad are traitors. Elven shapeshifters have infiltrated them." "First squad, follow me," he roared. "Purify the heretics." Marcus charged like a berserker, leading his elite first squad against the confused fourth. "Commander, we're surrounded." The cry echoed across the valley, then burst again from another throat. Marcus's battle axe finally fell. Driven by his zeal, the once proud first squad turned like a driven blade against their own comrades. The fourth squad, still reeling from the dizziness of the illusion, had barely recovered when they were struck by the fierce onslaught of those who should have been their allies. "He's gone mad! Marcus has gone mad! Traitors! Kill them!" The battle erupted with a savagery the Legion had never seen. This time there were no limits. Soldiers cut down the men next to them as if they were enemies. The Purification Legion's vanguard dissolved into a boiling mass of suspicion and blood. Between squads, between individuals, a chain of distrust snapped taut. Every movement, every breath could be interpreted as a threat. Men watched one another like wolves. The blue-robed priests on the ridgeline behind them watched the farce with ashen faces. "Stop! Everyone, stop!" they shouted. "What are you doing? Those are elves, not your brothers." Their voices were drowned beneath the thunder of combat. The chaos spread like wildfire. A few orders could not put it out. The lead priest's jaw tightened with a dawning horror. "It's an illusion," he said, grim. "The elves have used some unprecedented, large-scale illusion, one that detonates negative emotions. We must dispel it. Calm the soldiers," another priest cried. "Prepare the mind pacification divine spell." The lead priest raised his staff and made the decision. "Center on me. Gather your holy light." Over a dozen blue-robed priests closed ranks, hands on the shoulders of the man in front of them, forming a casting circle. A vast current of holy light began to converge, a gentle, sacred aura meant to wash the battlefield in peace. Jason watched the command echelon move from the press of fighting. A cold sneer cut across his face. Try to put out the fire? Fine, he would feed it. He lifted his staff as if to help, but his intent was not to heal. He locked his sights on the chief priest leading the mind pacification. A hair-thin filament of arcane energy pulsed from Jason's staff, the subtlest thing amid the storm, a pebble dropped into a boiling pot. Holy light interference. The principle was crude but effective. A high-frequency, anomalous vibration to disrupt the holy light's normally steady structure. Against a single stable spell, it might barely ruffle the weave. Against a massive, multi-caster divine right already strained by panic, it was poison. The golden orb of calming light that should have bathed the field in warmth wavered. Its color soured from sacred gold to an agitated, brassy hue. The peaceful aura vanished, replaced by a prickling fluctuation that made the men irritable and inexplicably furious. "This is bespelled, it's corrupted," the chief priest shouted, but the words came too late. The warped mind pacification swept down like a storm of dark gold. Those already teetering on fanaticism and suspicion felt as if a ladle of hot oil had been poured over them. "Ah!" One soldier clapped a hand to his head and howled, as if a cloud of flies buzzed behind his eyes. "Shut up!" A nearby comrade snapped. The shout inflamed the first man's anger until he lunged and drove his sword home. Fear gave way to irritation, suspicion to rage. Men stopped caring who wore an elven guise. Every sound and moving shape around them sparked disgust. They only wanted to strike, to vent that frantic animal hatred. Swords flashed, blood spattered. The battlefield became a fever dream of friends mutilating friends. Amid the madness, Jason moved like a shadow. He rode the chaos, dodging stray arrows with a thin holy light barrier while he hunted. A messenger tried to break through the ring of bodies to carry orders to the reserves. Jason was locked in combat with an elven impersonator when the messenger burst past at his rear. Jason's staff flicked. An arrow of holy light arced as if it had missed, but it bent in a precise parabola and thudded into the messenger's back. The man fell without a sound. "Sorry, I didn't mean to," Jason called, wearing a mask of regret. No one noticed. A mid-ranking knight, a deputy captain, had managed to rally a few men and shouted to form a defensive line. Jason, jostled by the turmoil, stumbled, and his staff flew from his hand. As it spun through the air, an accumulated bolt of holy light discharged, striking the deputy in the throat. He clutched his neck and dropped. Order stuttered and died. Like a phantom on a field of 10,000, Jason's interventions were always disguised: misses, accidents, collateral casualties. But one after another, the squad leaders, the couriers, the nodes of command that might restore cohesion collapsed under blows that looked unintentional. In an hour, the Legion's command system was being shredded from within by a single unseen hand. "We're infiltrated by elves. Every one of you is the enemy. The Holy Light is betraying us." Rational voices vanished. Panic replaced fever, and the Purification Legion unraveled into a slavering thing devouring its own tail. On the high slopes, Elrond and his reserves stared in stunned silence. They had been meant only to support, to be used when the moment was right. But the moment seemed to be arriving without them. "Elrond, what do we do now?" a ranger stammered. Elrond snapped back into focus and checked the message Jason had sent after the chaos began. "Shoot the ones in blue robes." Understanding flared. "Create chaos inside, then strike the head from outside." He drew breath until his voice shook with cold excitement. "All archers, free fire. Target anyone on horseback wearing blue priest robes. And shout, anything in Elvish, loud as you can," he added with a flash of cunning. "Make them not understand. Make it sound like a full-scale elven assault." "Yes." From the tree line, arrows sang in unison. Dozens of master archers loosed deadly flights. They arced over the riot below and drove toward the command on the ridgeline. Blue-robed priests, already unsteady from the corrupted spell, never saw the volleys until the first bolt struck. Thuds and screams followed. Several priests and mounts toppled, still wearing expressions of shocked confusion. "Enemy archers," someone screamed. "Protect the priest lords." The command echelon panic struck, and shouts in Elvish rose from the surrounding hills. "For the moon goddess! Drive out the invaders!" The Purification Legion's soldiers did not understand the words, but to them the cries were the unmistakable signal of an all-out elven offensive. "Pincer attack! We are surrounded!" The realization snapped something brittle in them. It became the final straw. The lead blue-robed priest watched as soldiers butchered each other and colleagues fell from the ridge like straw dolls. His composure shattered into bone-deep terror. This was no longer a war. It was a planned massacre aimed at the Legion itself. He roared with all his remaining strength. "Retreat! All forces withdraw!" The mournful blast of the horn rolled down the valley, but in the throes of panic, the command that usually meant safety became a death knell. The word retreat could not be passed cleanly through the chaos. It became a trigger. "We're going to die here! Run!" Men dropped weapons and fled. The narrow mouth of the valley became a bottleneck of death. Soldiers shoved, trampled, and stabbed at anyone who blocked the path to survival. The army that had marched in rigid iron now scattered like a flock of terrified sheep. Among the routed, a Templar knight, an inconspicuous, devoted subordinate of Inquisitor Silas, fled with the rest. His orders had been to watch the mage Jason Lester. As bodies surged, he glanced back and saw Jason. While everyone else ran like mad, the mage moved with an almost casual calm. He was retreating with the crowd, but there was no panic in his steps or his eyes. The knight watched a loyal captain slam into the press and try to stop the rout to reestablish a line. Jason's staff lifted with that same subtle motion as before. A stray bolt of holy light, as if deflected by the chaos, struck the captain in the back. The man collapsed. Jason did not flinch. He showed no surprise, no triumph, no grief, only the same composed mask. The knight's breath hitched. That had not been a mistake. Not the accuracy, not the timing, not the cold detachment. A terrible thought uncoiled in his mind and began to grow. The afterglow of the setting sun bathed the walls of Holy Light City in a bruised crimson. At the city gate, the crowd that had come to welcome their heroes home watched the disheveled, bloodied soldiers file in, their smiles freezing into disbelief. 4,000 had marched out. Fewer than 2,000 returned. Every one of them was wounded and unsteady, as if they had crawled out of hell. Jason was among them. His mage robe was slashed in several places. He had smudged a few bloodstains across his face and arms and wore an exhausted, haunted look that fit the scene perfectly. A crushing defeat. We actually suffered a crushing defeat? 4,000 Purification Legion soldiers. How could this happen? Holy light above. What on earth happened? Panic rippled through the city. What should have been a decisive victory had become a rout. The Legion's high command, the tribunal, needed an explanation that would both calm the populace and spare themselves. They moved fast. In the cold interrogation rooms beneath the cathedral, Jason sat on the familiar long bench. The tribunal's efficiency was brutal. As soon as the routed soldiers were processed, they were hauled in, isolated, and questioned one by one. Tell us everything you saw on the battlefield. The interrogator was a low-ranking priest who read from a ledger and asked practiced questions. Jason took a breath and began the testimony he had prepared. It was a nightmare. The elves used a kind of dark magic we'd never seen. His voice trembled, his eyes still reflecting fear. One moment my comrade stood beside me, brave and steady, and the next his face twisted into an elf's and he raised his blade against us. They were everywhere, changed elves everywhere. We couldn't tell friend from foe. It was terrible. Their illusions even warped our senses. I saw our squad's banner turn into a giant moon goddess deer totem. His account matched those of hundreds of others almost exactly, because Jason had planted those visions. Through tear-streaked accusations and frantic testimony, a single conclusion formed. The elves had unleashed a new, horrific collective illusion and transfiguration magic that turned the Legion inward. It placed the blame squarely on the elves and masked the command's failures. It was the perfect explanation. Next, a black-robed attendant waited at the door. "Lester, Inquisitor Silas wishes to see you alone." Jason's stomach tightened. He had expected this. In the dim confessional, Silas sat behind the oak table, fingers laced, gray eyes unreadable. "Lester," he said coolly, "we meet again." "Yes, sir," Jason replied, bowing slightly. "I have read your testimony and everyone else's." Silas tapped the table with his fingertips. "Very consistent, extremely consistent." "Because we all went through the same hell, sir," Jason said, sorrowful. Silas leaned forward, and that familiar pressure fell over the room. "Then explain a few details for me." "Ask. You blessed the troops before the war and prophesied the elves would use transfiguration, did you not?" "Yes, I received that revelation while communing with the Holy Light." "A very precise revelation," Silas said, a trace of sarcasm. "Your position on the field was in the back corner of the mage formation, the safest place when chaos started, yet your wounds look like you were in close combat." It was a dangerous question. Jason's heart tightened, but he forced a wry smile. "Sir, when everyone turns on one another, no place is safe. I saw two mages beside me fire holy light bolts at each other out of suspicion. I was caught in the crossfire. To survive, I had to dodge and cast barriers." Silas was silent for a moment, then pushed harder. "As a mage, when that collective illusion hit, what did the magic fluctuations feel like? Nature-based? Arcane? Shadow? Be precise." He fixed Jason with an intense stare, looking for the crack that would prove treachery. If Jason described anything arcane, suspicion would harden into accusation. Jason shook his head and let a professional bafflement show on his face. "That's what puzzles me, sir." That energy, he chose his words carefully. It was very strange. It wasn't the vitality of nature magic, nor the raw, violent signature of Arcane. It felt like mental pollution. He said pollution. It seemed to act directly on our souls, warping perception and amplifying inner fears. Even the holy light couldn't fully dispel it. It was like a maggot clinging to bone. I've never seen such evil. It was a half-truth, half-lie, an account that described Jason's sensory distortion field as a terrifying new magic. Silas considered him deeply. He could suspect Jason, but he could not dismiss the flood of consistent testimonies from so many survivors. Against that massive corroboration, any single doubt looked weak. He had no proof. Silas slowly leaned back and let the weight of his interrogation ebb. "You may go." He waved a hand, exhausted, "but the tribunal's investigation will continue." "Praise the holy light," Jason said, bowed and left. Only when he stepped out into the cold moonlight outside the cathedral did he allow himself to breathe. He had played Holy Light City once again. The church's high command had been forced to accept a conclusion they hated. The Purification Legion had been undone by a sinister elven conspiracy. Panic would give way to furious unity and fanaticism. Late that night, Jason returned to his room. After checking carefully that no one was near, he activated his communication crystal. A faint light pulsed, and Elrond's aged, excited face filled the projection. "Jason, we succeeded." Even through the crystal, Elrond's relief was raw. The entire Purification Legion, 4,000 men, less than half came back, and every one of them is shattered. They slaughtered each other in our ambush. We lost very little. Moonlight Valley is safe. Elrond bowed in an old elven ritual. On behalf of the Free Alliance and all survivors of Moonlight Valley, I offer our deepest thanks. From this day, you are our greatest friend, our most trusted ally. Jason's warning was calm but firm. You're celebrating too soon, Elrond. The joy drained from Elrond's face. Jason's look went serious. The church's defeat will enrage them. They won't give up easily. Elrond's expression hardened. You're right. Our informant inside the cathedral sent word. He dropped his voice. The High Command is furious. They've decided to use the ultimate purification relic stored in the deepest vault of the cathedral, the Eye of Holy Light Judgment. The name made Jason's pupils contract. What does it do? A weapon of judgment, Elrond said, voice grim. When activated, it fires a pillar of judgmental light into the sky, then detonates, washing the entire area in merciless purification. Everything in its range, elves, humans, animals, plants, will be turned to ash by the holy light. Their target, Jason said, finishing the thought. Elrond nodded, struggling to keep his composure. They intend to erase the entire Moonlight Forest, to wipe us and that land from the map. A new, graver task had formed in the silence between them. The air seemed to thicken. You must stop them, Elrond pleaded. Jason, only you can now infiltrate the deepest part of the cathedral and stop them before they activate the relic. This time, the enemy wasn't a battalion on a lonely road. It was the most heavily guarded, fanatical center of Holy Light City itself, the cathedral. 316, the price of an elf. Elrond's face filled the projection in the communication crystal. Despair had leached the life out of him. His features were suddenly hollow, the wrinkles cut deep as if by a knife. The news he carried pressed on the air like something that might harden into stone. The Eye of Holy Light's judgment, the plan to raise the entire Moonlight Forest. Jason, you are our only hope. Elrond's voice rasped, like a bellows with a hole in it. Every word was a plea, raw and urgent. Only you, this mysterious, powerful ally, can once again create a miracle. Jason listened without expression. Sympathy? Pity? Those notions flickered through his mind and were gone, washed away by something more practical. His thoughts were already moving, fast. Moonlight Forest was an untouched treasure trove, a virgin land full of magic plants long extinct elsewhere, rare minerals buried beneath the soil, and unique magical creatures. If the fanatics from the church burned it with that damned holy relic, the loss to his future resource collection and to the construction of his floating city would be catastrophic. He could not let the forest be destroyed. That did not mean he would do it for free. He stared at the pleading, expectant face in the crystal and silently sorted the task into his ledger. It was high risk, but the reward was enormous. Elrond. Jason's voice was flat as still water and sharp as a surgical blade, slicing clean through any illusion of selfless altruism the elf had hoped for. I'll save you. Yes. Light flared in Elrond's eyes at once. Then Jason added the words that stopped him cold. But I need compensation. Elrond's mouth opened and closed as if he'd heard a fairy tale. For a moment he was speechless, unable to believe what he'd heard. Jason didn't soften or explain. He stated the terms plainly, like an accountant closing a contract. Moonlight Forest is an undeveloped treasure. I cannot let it be destroyed. That's one reason I'm willing to act. But to risk my life infiltrating the heart of the most heavily guarded cathedral in Holy Light City, I require compensation that reflects the danger. There was no false politeness, no lofty rhetoric, just a cold, straightforward exchange of interests. The shock on Elrond's face relaxed into understanding. Centuries of life had taught the elf how the world worked. The very reason this man could produce miracles was because he never let emotion or moralizing get in the way. Every move had a clear, concrete aim. Dealing with such a man was preferable to dealing with hypocrites preaching righteousness. I understand. Elrond drew a long breath and shifted from pleading supplicant to negotiator. For the survival of Moonlight Forest, the elves will pay any price. He straightened and, with solemn gravity, made the offer. In the name of the Elf Elder Council, I promise that if you can prevent this disaster, our people will grant you 3 things. Jason's gaze shifted, an invitation to continue. First, Elrond said, raising a finger, a core branch from the moon god ancient tree. It has stood for 10,000 years and is saturated with the purest spatial magic. It's a top-tier material for constructing spatial devices or building teleportation gates. Top-tier spatial magic. Jason's pulse tightened. Such material was priceless for the floating city. Second, Elrond continued, lifting another finger, a small vial of water from the spring of eternity. It is the lifeblood of the forest. It cleanses the soul, restores depleted source power, and in the direst moments can even bring the dying back from the brink. Jason's breath caught. He had overdrawn his own life to resurrect Hermione. The pact with the god of death kept him alive, but his source power was dangerously low. That vial mattered more to him than any artifact. Elrond noticed the fleeting change in Jason and pressed on with the third and most crucial term. Third, priority mining rights to all resources in Moonlight Forest. All magical plants, minerals, and materials from the forest's creatures are yours to use, so long as you do not damage the forest. The Free Alliance and all the elves will give you every convenience. That was exactly why Jason had wanted to save the forest, a massive long-term profit for a relatively small investment. For the first time since the crystal had flickered to life, a hint of satisfaction crossed his face. Deal. 2 words. The agreement was sealed. Elrond breathed out, feeling as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. For a heartbeat, he simply sagged, the strain of hope and terror draining from him. He knew he had secured the lives of Moonlight Forest and tens of thousands of elves. What shall we do next? The Free Alliance and all our people will cooperate fully with your plan, Elrond asked, his tone reverent and businesslike. A solid alliance of interests had been formed. Jason was no longer just a rescuer, he was an investor. That purpose was more dependable than vague friendships. I need 2 things, Jason said, his gaze sharpening. The infiltration plan had begun. First, the most detailed internal schematic of the Holy Light Cathedral you can provide. Every chamber, every secret passage, all magical traps, and the locations of defensive magic nodes. Your informants must obtain it. Yes, Elrond answered without hesitation. It will be difficult, but we'll get it, even if we must pay with our lives. Second, Jason's voice dropped, carrying an unmistakable command. I need the patrol routes and shift schedules of every watcher in the cathedral's core. The more precise, the better, down to the second. Only an oil lamp on the table threw a dim, wavering light across the hotel room. Jason Lester slowly unrolled the parchment map he'd obtained from the Free Alliance onto the table. It had been sketched roughly, the lines crooked and hurried, proof that the informant had risked his life, relying on memory and quick glances. Most of the cathedral's features were marked, but the most critical place, the eerie chamber that housed the Eye of Holy Light Judgment, had 3 words scrawled beside it, poked by a pen: God's Forbidden Zone. After that, there was nothing, an empty blank. Relying on such a thing to assault a den of dragons and tigers was nothing short of suicide. Jason's fingers tapped the circle on the map. Thud, thud, thud. He had to see for himself. Without anyone noticing, he would reproduce the cathedral's defenses in his head, nail by nail, screw by screw. He drew from his pouch a small lump of mithril, a pinch of finely ground magic crystal powder, and a single drop of mercury. A faint arcane light flickered at his fingertips as his knowledge of alchemy and rune mysteries intertwined. The mithril melted. The mercury took up the crystal powder and seeped into the molten metal. After tracing a series of complex runes, over a dozen metallic particles, barely larger than dust, hovered silently in his palm. Miniature magic probes, a product of Hogwarts, alchemy woven with arcane arts, tools this world couldn't have imagined. They were virtually invisible, weightless, almost incorporeal, carrying only a barely perceptible magical signature. Jason opened the window. Evening air rushed in, and with a flick of his wrist, the dozen tiny motes drifted out, catching the breeze and floating toward the brightly lit cathedral. The motes would cling to clergy entering and leaving the cathedral and be carried inside. Jason closed his eyes and extended his will like countless invisible threads to touch them. In his mind, a new map began to form, not drawn in ink, but woven from points of light and flows of energy, a living, 3-dimensional model. The probes scattered through the cathedral like dandelion seeds. They recorded the frequency of every divine spell trap, marked the magic nodes of defensive arrays, traced guard patrol routes, and their blind spots. Data streamed into his brain in an overwhelming rush. Jason's mind became an exacting loom, integrating, analyzing, and weaving those scattered threads into a coherent picture. A real-time 3D magic map, far more precise than any elven chart, grew clearer by the second. Corridor lengths, wall thicknesses, guard rotation timings, thresholds that would trigger divine spells, everything resolved into cold, precise data. Soon, a blind spot jumped out from the model. Along the base of the cathedral's foundation ran a pipe system from north to south. Its energy signature was dim. There were no divine defenses along it, only physical iron grates, probably rusted. The sewers. A small, almost involuntary smirk curved the corner of Jason's mouth. Those clerics, so certain of their sanctity, would never imagine someone coming up through their filth. Their arrogance, as it turned out, was the best entry point. He concentrated the probe's attention on the area around the god's forbidden zone. He had to find the key. By comparing entry and exit logs and tracking personnel movement, a likely target emerged. An old deacon of modest rank who entered the forbidden zone alone at the same time each day to clean and maintain the chamber. The probes latched onto a ring of keys at his waist. One bore a faint but unique holy light seal. It was unmistakable. With all the intelligence in place, a bold, precise plan formed. First, have the Free Alliance stage a massive commotion at Holy Light City's west gate, the bigger, the better, to pull the city guard and Inquisitor Silas away. Second, Jason would slip into the cathedral's underground through the sewers amid the chaos. Third, he would intercept the deacon at the calculated spot, put him to sleep with an illusion, and covertly replicate the seal on the key. Fourth, using the forged key, he would enter the god's forbidden zone and destroy the core energy source of the Eye of Holy Light Judgment in one decisive strike. Fifth, he would return the way he came and disappear. The plan was an interlocking sequence, a precision strike born of information asymmetry and arcane craft. Perfect, he thought. Jason opened the communication crystal. Elrond, notify your people, he said, his voice cold and hard. Tomorrow at midnight, strike the west of the city. Understood. Elrond's reply carried more excitement than restraint. Everything was set. As he almost cut the link, a prickling caution ran through him, an instinct that made him control one of the probes and send it silently toward the deepest part of the Inquisition chambers, Silas's office. He wanted one last confirmation that the most dangerous adversary was truly away and contained. The probe slipped through a crack in the door. The office was empty. Silas had gone west to deploy defenses as expected. His desk was neat. Documents were put away. Jason guided the probe across the desktop and froze when it focused on a dossier, held down by a candlestick, as if left for later. On the cover, a name was written in the common tongue of the continent, Jason Lester. That was the false identity he'd assumed after arriving in this world. A chill ran through him so sudden and deep that it felt like all the blood in his body had turned to ice. Silas's suspicion had never gone away. That bastard had been investigating him all along. 318. Lure the tiger away from the mountain boom. Midnight in Holy Light City, a silence like still water was shattered by a tremendous explosion. In the west of the city, a warehouse belonging to the Temple of War. No, now it was a fireball. Flames licked the sky, painting half the heavens an ominous red. The blast tore off the roof. Burning timbers and cargo fell in showers, igniting everything they struck. Fire! Put it out! People cried. The Temple of War's warehouse. It's blown! Others screamed. Screams and the tolling bells spread through the streets, shattering sleep. Residents poured into the lanes, faces pale, staring at the conflagration that threatened to swallow the western quarter. The first to arrive were the temple's own knights. Seeing their storage in ruins, rage showed in their eyes, rage that wanted a throat to tear out. A knight captain pried something from a charred beam and examined it in the firelight, then exploded. Sir, it's an elven arrow. He held the shaft up. Its ornate, unmistakable markings belonged to the Moonlight Forest folk. He shouted at the newly arrived city guard commander, "Those damned long ears! They've come for revenge! How dare they!" The discovery was fuel on the inferno. Nobody in Holy Light City had forgotten the Purification Legion's defeat. The idea that the elves might return for retribution had been a half-terrifying rumor. Now the nightmare had come true, vengeance burning at their doorstep. "Seal the West District! Lock down the whole city!" came the orders. "Holy Light Knights, sweep the streets! Round up every rat!" shouted another. "War Knights, with me! Tonight we dig them out and rip their heads off if we have to." Like a hornet's nest disturbed, the city's forces swarmed. Armored squads sealed alleys, white-cloaked Holy Light Knights flitted in the firelight. Red-eyed war knights, axes and hammers in hand, battered through drains and doorways, hauling anyone they found for questioning. In the Court of Inquisition, Silas stood by a window watching the orange glow in the west as if admiring a painting. "Elves," he said at last, voice flat but full of contempt, like commenting on an insect. "Vermin that skulk in the shadows, never seeing daylight, and yet they dare run rampant in Holy Light City." His cold snort carried a cruelty that bit deeper than the flames, an affront to the court and to him. The Purification Legion's failure stung. Now the enemy had tossed fire in his face. Slowly, with exaggerated care, he took a pair of shiny black leather gloves from a shelf and slid them on finger by finger. "The dignity of the court is not to be trifled with," he said quietly, colder than the blast. "Ready the horses. I want to see if these long ears truly have such hard bones as the stories claim." "Sir," a kneeling knight protested, anxious, "but if you leave the great cathedral's defenses—" "It will do," Silas waved the concern away like a fly. "The best defense is to annihilate the enemy. Tonight, the gutters and sewers will learn one thing: Holy Light City has no place for them to hide." As Silas and a squad of Inquisition knights thundered out, the top-floor defenses of the great cathedral were left bare. From an inn window nearby, a man watched them go. The architect of the knights' plans, Jason. He saw the black robes of an inquisitor disappear into the streets, and when the mounted men rounded a corner and vanished, he let his gaze fall. The fire and screams outside were background. The real work lay elsewhere. Jason changed into the black outfit he'd prepared, seeming to melt into shadow. He dipped his fingertips in a cold potion, traced a series of arcane runes across his face. The burning sting felt like painting over his features. A faint glow flared, then died, his contours blurred as if viewed through rippling water. His aura bent and hid. Excellent, he thought, slipping like a ghost out the window and into the alley. He moved through the night like a cat, silent, quick, never stepping into a patch of light. His destination was the forgotten storage area behind the great cathedral. He pushed aside waist-high weeds and a heap of foul trash to reveal a rusted iron grate over a drainage outlet. The keyhole had long ago eaten its lock. No one would bother to open it. Jason didn't need a key. He mouthed a word. "Corrosion." A tiny bead of acidic magic clung to the hinge. It hissed as metal met acid. The hinge sagged. The welds gave way like soft wax. Then Jason whispered, "Rise." An unseen hand hooked the heavy grate. Without metallic scraping, it slid aside as if lifted by a giant. A black hole yawned. A stench burst up, putrefaction, excrement, and years of rotten filth that would have made most people retch. Jason didn't flinch. He swore a soft charm. A thin, nearly invisible blue aura wrapped him, isolating his senses from the reek. He glanced once toward the distant fire, as if admiring a completed canvas, then crouched and slipped into the darkness. The grate closed silently behind him, another ghostly hand setting it back in place. The sewers were a living dark, so absolute that it blurred the edges of sight. Only the plip-plop of water and the distant drip of unseen leaks marked his progress. Jason relied on a three-dimensional map he'd memorized and threaded through the labyrinth of pipes as if it were his backyard. He rounded a corner, moving to the vault directly beneath the cathedral's foundations, when something in his mental sense twitched, a ripple, very faint, almost swallowed by the stench and the press of darkness. If his focus had been less sharp, he wouldn't have felt it. This wasn't Holy Light's light or regular arcane hum. It was older, deeper, a dormant thing stirring. It carried a funeral chill, the kind of deathly aura that clung to tombs and ruined places. For a moment, it felt as if something that had slept for thousands of years in these rotten drains had opened an eye. 319. Key and Keeper. The sewers were pitch black. Aside from Jason's footsteps, the only presence in the air was a pungent mix of rust and damp earth. The three-dimensional map in his head was as clear as if someone had carved it into bone. Every fork, every corner, every utility shaft was fixed and unchanging. He'd already marked the odd fluctuation he'd sensed earlier, but that could wait. Creating extra trouble right now would be stupid. He moved fast to the point on the map. Above him, the old deacon's dormitory lay under a heavy stone arch. The key to the Holy Relic storeroom was kept there. Jason stared up at the ceiling, feeling the place as much as he saw it, and a yellow-brown light coalesced at his fingertips. Fossil to mud. He pressed his palm to the cold, damp stone. Arcane energy seeped in like water. The hard stone quietly softened, becoming sticky and malleable as warm mud. He followed with another, quieter incantation, and a sound-dampening barrier slid over the tunnel entrance. Slipping his hands into the softened stone, he shifted the blocks apart until there was just enough room for a person to crawl through. Not a grain of dust fell, not a sound escaped. He wriggled through, landing in the maintenance tunnel above with a muted thud. With a flick of his hand, the mud re-hardened into stone, leaving no sign of entry. A prayer rose from the room, old, practiced, pious. Jason squeezed behind a utility cabinet and peered through the crack in the door. The room was bare, bed, table, kneeling cushion, nothing more. On the cushion, an old deacon knelt, hair and beard white as bone, hands clasped, eyes shut, lips moving in supplication. "Oh, great holy light, shelter your lost lamb. The fire in the west is an evil provocation. Grant your grace, guide your warriors, and utterly purify those who profane your glory." His voice trembled. Perfect, Jason thought. He didn't use crude control magic that would leave fingerprints on a soul. Instead, an invisible filament of his mind slid into the deacon's thoughts, a faint suggestion that strengthened the old man's own fervor. The deacon shivered. Suddenly, in his perception, the room filled with a warm, sacred radiance. A soft gold glow bloomed behind his closed lids. Somewhere he heard a solemn, compassionate answering note. God answered me!" The deacon wept, whole body shaking, wrapped in a trance of gratitude. "Now, mage hand." An invisible hand reached from shadow, ghosting across the deacon's waist to take the heavy brass ring of keys. Jason brought them to his palm and drew from his storage space a palm-sized block of dull, silvery gray metal, memory metal. He pressed the keys to it. As arcane energy streamed through, the metal's surface rippled like water and, in under a second, perfectly replicated the shape of every key, down to the minute fluctuations of the holy light seal carved into each one. He was about to return the originals when something on the table caught his eye. An old yellowed notebook lay open. Moonlight threaded through the small window and lit a line of scrawled text. "Hallowed be light's judgment, rest worn and illegible, purify all in the world." The activation command. Even fragmented, it was crucial intelligence. Who knew why the deacon had written such a thing down? Habit, fear, a backup to memory, but it was a risk Jason could exploit. He let a shimmer of arcane energy brush the page, the words duplicated into his mind and into his own store, letter for letter. The invisible hand laid the keys back on the deacon's belt. The whole operation had taken less than 5 seconds. The old deacon continued to tremble and weep, lost in his ecstatic vision, unaware of the theft. Jason slipped back through the access tunnel, melted the stone closed behind him, and returned to the sewers. With a copied set of keys and a fragment of the command, he didn't linger. Deeper into the cathedral's underbelly, the defenses tightened. In one corridor, a dozen floating eyes of alertness blinked and drifted like headless flies, each emitting a faint holy light that could detect non-divine power. Jason snapped his fingers and wove an intricate illusion. In the eye's vision, he was no thief, but a scurrying mouse chasing its mates in a corner. The eyes watched the little scene and drifted on. He walked by. Another stretch of floor was laced with pressure-sensitive runes. Stepped on wrong, and alarms would peel the place open. Jason cast a subtle anti-gravity charm on himself. He became effectively weightless, his feet kissing the stone without pressing, and floated past like a feather. Arcane craft, he thought, was precision and cunning. Divine magic had rules, intelligence had loopholes. At last he stood before the storeroom, a massive circular door of black obsidian set into the rock, dead and immovable. Golden sacred runes crawled across its face like a nest of worms, radiating an oppressive holiness. This was the Holy Relic storeroom. Jason held the copied keys. They felt cool in his hand. At the center of the door was an ancient keyhole, ringed by a more elaborate array. He recognized it immediately, a dual-lock system that required the correct key, the precise spoken command, and a matching divine power signature. The command he'd taken from the deacon's notebook was incomplete. He narrowed his eyes and ran options through his head. Fake the holy light signature with arcane energy and hope the array accepted a simulation? Force the array with a brute force blast and risk a cascade of alarms? The calculations flickered and resolved like lightning, each path with its own probabilities and penalties. He was about to decide when there was a soft sound, a faint creak like rusted metal grinding, that came from behind the obsidian. It was almost nothing, but in the silence of the underground it rang like an explosion in his ear. Jason's body froze, his pupils pinched down to pinpricks. Someone was inside. Jason's muscles tightened. Every contingency he'd planned for breaking in stalled at once. There was someone behind the stone door. His mental power seeped through the thick obsidian like mercury, probing inward. There was definitely a life thread there, weak, flickering like a candle in the wind, but the quality of that life essence was deeper than any cleric Jason had ever sensed, even deeper than Silas. This was a powerful being, imprisoned. A frontal assault would be madness. He couldn't know what alarms lay beyond the door. Trigger one and he'd face not just a handful of guards, but the whole great cathedral, and perhaps even the awakened eye of holy light judgment. He needed another approach. A flash of resolve sharpened his features. Jason condensed his mental power into a fine thread and pierced the prisoner's mind with a clear, cold thought. I come to destroy holy light. If you want your freedom, cooperate. The message carried no emotion, an ultimatum. The faint aura beyond the door flickered, then trembled as if struggling with something. After a few seconds, an old hoarse voice rasped into Jason's head, like sandpaper grinding. Who are you? An arcanist? That doesn't matter, Jason answered, iron in his thought. What matters is that we have a common enemy. Silence hung for a beat, then a brittle, mirthless laugh leaked through. Ha! Ha! The prisoner's voice was full of self-mockery and a far deeper sorrow. A common enemy? Well said indeed. My name is Philip, the voice continued. I was the former Archbishop of the Temple of Wisdom. I opposed the Holy Light Church's reckless expansion. They called me a blasphemer, accused me, falsely, of stealing divine power, and locked me in this cursed place. Hatred poured from the thought. They wouldn't kill me. My soul is tied to the Temple of Wisdom's heirloom artifact. So they made a prison of the sanctum. They claim I'm guarding a holy object, but in truth they're using me as a living power source, siphoning my divine energy to feed that damned war machine. Jason's heart skipped. The Archbishop of the Temple of Wisdom, an unexpected prize. What do you want? Philip demanded. The method to open this door and to disable the internal alarm, Jason said. Tell me how. Philip paused only a moment. I know the full password, but I have one condition. Speak. Take me out of this place. Jason agreed without hesitation. It was a pragmatic bargain born of aligned interests. Philip relayed the password precisely. Hallowed, judgment of light, in the name of God, cleanse all impure souls in the world. He instructed Jason to guide the masquerading holy light in his own aura with mental power and recite the phrase in concert with the array's fluctuations. There is a backup control core under the third stone brick on the left inside, Philip added. Interfere with it with your power for 3 seconds and the main array will go dormant. You will only have 10 minutes. Jason memorized everything. He slid the copied key into the cold keyhole, laid his palm on the stone, and channeled the trace of disguised holy light energy within him, aligning it to the array's rhythm. Hallowed, judgment of light, in the name of God, cleanse all impure souls in the world, he whispered. When the last syllable fell, the complex golden runes on the door flared, then dimmed. A heavy click sounded as the obsidian door eased open. A purer, more violent surge of holy light rushed from the gap. Jason slipped inside without hesitation and moved straight to the left wall, finding the third stone brick by feel. He fed arcane energy into it. The runic core beneath winked, and for a heartbeat, the storage room's power flow hiccuped. Alarm disabled. Only then did he look up. At the center of the chamber floated a vast, eye-shaped holy object of crystal and runework. At its heart, a contracting, liquid sun core pulsed, spitting energy fluctuations that warped space itself. The eye of holy light judgment. Beneath it, a gaunt old man hung suspended, limbs spread and bound by dozens of rune chains. Glowing conduits plunged into his flesh, siphoning divine power into the eye. It was Philip. Philip lifted his head, eyes bright with hope. Jason did not rush to smash the artifact. That would draw catastrophic attention. He had a subtler plan. From his storage space, he produced a fingernail-sized black runestone etched with intricate arcane patterns, an arcane contamination rune. Its purpose was not to explode, but to corrupt. Jason flicked the rune into a shadow-slick streak of black light. It clung silently to the pulsing core and vanished as if absorbed. Dormant now, the rune would wait. If the holy object ever fully activated, the violent holy energy would trigger the rune's internal structure, detonating a collapse of the artifact's arcane order. The eye's beam would misfire. Its core would tear itself apart in irreparable conflict. Better than smashing it. This was Arcanist craft. Remove the rug from under its feet. With the corruption rune in place, Jason severed the rune chains binding Philip with several precise arcs of arcane energy. The old man collapsed to the floor, spent and gasping. Jason scooped him up without delay and retraced his steps. They emerged into the foul-smelling sewer where allies waited. Philip's breathing steadied. He trembled as he drew a metal insignia from his chest and pressed it into Jason's palm. "This is a letter of introduction from the temple," he rasped. "You helped me. I can't let you leave empty-handed." He explained. The letter would allow Jason to go to any Temple of Wisdom branch in a border town and receive a new, clean identity, a priest, a wandering scholar. Far safer than Jason's compromised mage persona. Jason felt something like triumph and relief. A legitimate identity was a key to escape Holy Light City's vortex. At the agreed rendezvous, Jason handed Philip over to the waiting elves. He did not linger. Slipping into the city's shadows, he cast a last look back at the bright nightscape of Holy Light City and stepped away. He had preserved Moonlight Forest for the future, secured the elves' favor and 3 valuable treasures, and rescued a prominent figure, earning himself a new identity that could change everything. 3 victories at once. He closed his fingers around the metal insignia. Stamped on it was a simple town name, Dawnlight Town. The upheaval of Holy Light City was no longer his concern. The chapter of the wandering arcanist Jason Lester had ended. A probationary priest from a border town was about to step onto the stage of the world.